With one of the best savings rates in America, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. Even easier than choosing Slash to be in your band.
Next up for lead guitar. You're in.
Cool.
Yep, even easier than that. And with no fees or minimums on checking and savings accounts, is it even a decision? That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One N.A. member FDIC.
The following is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network.
Hey, this is Scott Norton, and you're listening to Keepin It Strong Style.
Yo, this is Rich Latta from One Nation Radio. This is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network. We present to you the Ace of Podcasts, Keepin It Strong Style. Let's go. It's the Ace of Podcasts, Keepin It Strong Style. Covering New Japan, they ready to hold it down. Jeremy Donovan and the young boy Josh come and hit a job out and bury all the frauds. From the Tokyo Dome over to the G1. Social Suplex is the network where we can get it done. I'ma chill and let them have it, cause this is just an intro. Keeping the strong style, 6 stars from the get-go, boy. Yeah, from Tampa Bay to the Tokyo Dome, this is Keeping It Strong Style with your hosts, Jeremy Donovan and the young boy Joshua Smith. And thank you for listening.
Welcome to Keepin It Strong Style, the ace of podcasts on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. The young boy Joshua Smith here. On today's show, I will review the new beginning in Sapporo Nights 1 and 2, preview the new beginning in Osaka, and cover all the latest news in the world of New Japan Pro Wrestling. You can support the show by subscribing and following the Social Suplex Podcast Network or Keeping It Strong Style on the podcast app of your choice and leaving a rating and review. You can also get all the podcasts over at socialsuplex.com. Check out our Pro Wrestling Tees store, prowrestlingtees.com/socialsuplex. That's where you can get your official Keeping It Strong Style t-shirt. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider making a one-time or monthly donation by visiting socialsuplex.com/donate and clicking on the donate button under the Keepin' It Strong Style logo. This week's episode is brought to you by NJPWEXT, the only browser extension for NewJapanWorld.com, featuring frequently updated and with features like dark mode, improved translations and layouts, custom and shared playlists, synchronized viewing parties, and much, much more. It takes NJPW World to the next level. Visit njpwext.us today for details. And ladies and gentlemen, as you can hear, I am here solo on the feed, all by myself, no guest host, no Jeremy Donovan. He is away with his wife. They're on a work/marriage retreat. I don't know what you do on those. Hopefully he's having a really, really great time. And I am here with all of you lovely people. And last week I was pretty gung-ho about doing this show by myself, I've got to tell you. I'd done a lot of research. I thought I'd gotten the correct technical specs and software necessary for me to do this show to the highest of degrees. And we even did like pilot test episodes with different things. I mean, I'd done a lot of research, copious amounts of research to get everything prepped for tonight's recording. And then I go in to this gimmick to log this shit, and it just won't work for me for whatever reason. It figures that would be my luck. I'd already gotten the go ahead by the big boss man, Jeremy Donovan. You know, he listened to it, he thought it sounded okay, and then someone told me, like, that's not for you, baby. So I don't know. They didn't want me to do that. I did, however, find an alternative way to record. Hopefully this sounds good, because this is the only recording I'm going to be doing tonight. I can assure you of that. I know in the past I did a special quote-unquote bonus episode covering Tamashi in the early part of January, and it didn't sound very good. And I'm recording by similar means, but hopefully better quality means this time. And if you're listening for the first time and the quality is just dog shite. I get it. Trust me, we have a certain level of excellency and quality that we expect here at Keepin It Strong Style. And if this doesn't meet that level, my apologies to each and every single one of you. We will get this figured out. We've got some upgrades to the show coming down the pipeline. But in the meantime, you get to hear my dulcet tones, my voice, and I'm going to be with you here for the next little while. I don't know how long the show is going to go. Hopefully not too long, but we do have a lot to cover here. And so I'm going to give it to you guys as best as I possibly can on my own, which it is nerve-wracking. This is probably like the 6th or 7th time I've tried to record this audio, but whatever happens on this recording, I'm not going to stop it. If I flub, if I mess up, you guys are just going to have to give me some leeway here, because I'm used to being in a tag team, all right? I'm not used to being a singles guy. That's not really my jam. And I'm usually the hot tag guy. Jeremy's the babyface in peril. He lays the groundwork. I just come in, house of fire, boom, 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 give a big boot, tag him back in, let him get the 1, 2, 3. That's about all I really do. So he usually does most of the heavy lifting. So it's all on my shoulders tonight. So hopefully it's not too atrocious. But we do have a lot to discuss here. The first thing that I wanted to make mention of was the passing of legend Lanny Poffo. He passed away from this earth on February the 2nd, 2023. And there's a lot that could be said about Lanny Poffo if you're not familiar with him. A legend of the Poffo family from the ICW territory, the outlaw territory, quote unquote, back in the late 70s, early 80s. And there's a lot of really great subject matter out there covering his life. I'm sure Dave Meltzer's going to do a really, really great job in the Wrestling Observer newsletter this week, kind of just talking about the entire history of Lanny Poffo. I've heard a lot of obituaries and well wishes and retrospectives. This podcast might not be the one to potentially do all that. I mean, I think I could do something to that degree, but the reality here is Lanny was more of a territory star. He was a guy that was well known in the WWF. He made a huge mark in wrestling through his family and his family's name, but he didn't have a huge tie to New Japan Pro Wrestling, except in late 2018, I believe it was, when he was invited for whatever reason to come over and do a English commentary desk tryout. And Lanny is kind of like a boisterous, positive voice. He's this guy that, is known for doing limericks and poems and rhyming and that sort of thing. And I don't know that I'd ever heard too much about him being a commentator. And I'd never heard too much about him being connected to New Japan, other than him being an innovator of the high-flying offense in North America, and seeing Satoru Sayama do the moonsault for the first time. He took that move over to North America and was one of the first people, and might even quite possibly be the first in North America to ever use a moonsault, which he did give all credit to Sayama. But that was about the full extent of his connection to Shinihan. And that showed when he was on the desk, and he was a great guy. I don't want to say anything too negative about Lanny Poffo here whatsoever. He's got a legendary legacy behind him, but his time in New Japan on the broadcast commentary desk was pretty comical, very, very funny. In fact, it became so apparent that he wasn't good at this that he kind of was in on the gag, and towards the tail end of the tour that he was covering, like, he was making like self-deprecating remarks about how he really didn't know much about the competitors or the sport or what was going on whatsoever. He did give us the one bit of long-lasting legacy, though, in that he called the Rev Pro champion at the time, I don't even recall who it was, he called him the champion of the British, which so many people found that funny. It's kind of just been this thing that stuck, and you hear it on English commentary all the time. Chris Charlton says it, Kevin Kelly, you'll hear it on this podcast and other places, and that's one of those things that Lanny sort of put out there into the zeitgeist and sort of has stood the brief test of time. But I was kind of surprised and sad to hear about the passing of Lanny Poffo. And, our best wishes go out to him and his family. I did see that friend of the show, Mavs Gillis, who also is a alumni of the English broadcasting team. He put out a really great retrospective kind of detailing his time in Japan with Lanny and their friendship. We did go ahead and retweet that on our timeline. So if you haven't checked that out, I highly recommend it. That's probably going to do a better job of any sort of memorial I could do on this show. But best wishes to Lanny Poffo and his family. But let's jump into this review. So we had 2 nights of New Beginning action coming from the Hokkaido Prefectural Sports Center. Both nights were on February 4th and February 5th. Night 1, we had a reported attendance of 3,073. This was just a little bit under what they did for night 2, 3,316 reported attendance, but pretty good houses for that venue on both evenings. And both nights are kind of similar in a certain respect. You've got the first 5 matches of the evening are pretty much going to be undercard, sort of like Road 2 level preview matches. Either that, or you also might have like a Young Lion opener, which they're prone to do in New Japan. Then the last 3 matches of each night were very much, the main attractions and the main events of the evening. So we're going to go through these nights real quick, and I'll do my best to kind of give you guys a recap of the action and the story and kind of fill in for Jeremy not being here because he sort of helps me out with that stuff quite a bit. But the first match of the night, we saw Great Okan defeat Oscar Luebe 7 minutes and 25 seconds. And this was pretty interesting. Oscar is the youngest of the Young Lions that's active right now. Big guy from Germany and someone that we've been very impressed with so far. And he was a good test for Great Okan, who recently was defeated in his challenge for the KOPW title. He is the current reigning British openweight, or the RevPro undisputed British heavyweight champion. He wore that title to the ring. He came down and really got started grinding out Oscar Luebe. He gave him a lot of like groundwork, kind of kept him on the mat, and just hit him with a lot of different things. Anaconda Vice on the mat early. Oscar was able to reach the ropes. Later on, he nailed him with a vertical suplex. Luebe fired back with a body slam, and he got fired up. Eventually, Oscar was able, even though Great Okan controlled most of the majority of the match, Luebe was able to get that body slam and then put Okan into a Boston Crab. And this was a little different because we're very accustomed to seeing Young Lions apply Boston Crabs and tease a victory only to be foiled. But Okan did such a phenomenal job here, teasing that he was actually really going to tap out. And it was very, very close to looking like it was lights out, like maybe he had played too much with his food on this evening and gave too much of an opening for Oscar. But eventually, just before he tapped out, he reaches the ropes at 7 minutes, and Okan was pissed, immediately applied his Sheep Killer chokehold. I believe the name of that move, officially, it is the, let's see here, the Subaru Ozaro styled Sheep Killer, and it's sort of like a crossface chokehold, standing crossface chokehold, neck crank. It's sort of a nasty bit of business that he does there, but Oscar did a really great job selling it, kind of trying to give a verbal submission, and then eventually passing out from the maneuver at 7 minutes and 25 seconds. So Great Okan picks up the win there, and good story that he sort of was just in control the whole time and then gave too much of an opening for this young lion to potentially get a surprise win, and then just kind of got him out of there. The second match of the night, we saw the team of El Desperado, Minoru Suzuki, and Ren Narita. Those 3 men are teaming up. They are currently feuding with the House of Torture, and they're sort of in a tumultuous, tension-filled alliance. I wouldn't call it a unit just yet, but they sort of have an alliance. Those 3 men teamed up with Young Lion Ryohei Oiwa and they defeated the House of Torture team of Dick Togo, Evil, Sho, and Yujiro Takahashi. This match went 9 minutes and 36 seconds. And just before the bell, House of Torture attacked, which you would have expected Suzuki and Desperado to expect something like that, since that's a staple of Suzuki-gun for years and years and years on end. But they were attacked, and the match kind of got kicked off from there. This match was good. A lot of back and forth, a lot of House of Torture shenanigans, misdirection, choking, that sort of stuff. But the big story of the match was essentially the fact that Suzuki and Narita have a lot of tension between one another. And they weren't like prone to tag one another. They weren't working well as a unit. There's just a lot of like miscommunication. And I think a lot of where this comes from, Suzuki and Desperado, obviously they teamed together for years as members of Suzuki-gun. Ren Narita, he's a guy that, was from the LA dojo, the Noge dojo, just returned from his excursion, and he's calling himself the son of Strong Style. Well, while Minoru Suzuki is obviously the epitome of Strong Style, coming from that rich tradition, going back to Karl Gotch and Antonio Inoki, someone who literally descends from that lineage. And it's kind of funny that, Ren Narita calls himself the son of Strong Style, because Suzuki literally is Strong Style. So, but yeah, they continue to have dissension amongst their ranks throughout the match. House of Torture did a really great job isolating Oiwa, but eventually Desperado was tagged in for a hot tag at around 6 minutes and 30 seconds. Sho ends up hitting a spear in Desperado. Desperado fires back with a spine buster. They tag in Narita, who battled with Evil. He hit a really, really, really great Northern Lights suplex on Dick Togo. There was a point where they started to choke Narita with the garrote wire, but Suzuki came in and made the save. And just after the Northern Lights suplex on Togo, Narita applies the Cobra stretch in the middle of the ring, and he gets the tap out on Dick Togo. After the match, Suzuki and Narita were talking, and Minoru says something to the effect of, "If you stick with me, I'll take you to the top." Suzuki then turned and left, and it was pretty clear that Narita was a little conflicted, but he wasn't ready to fully embrace Desperado and Suzuki and shake hands with them. And that finish came at 9 minutes, 36 seconds. So pretty good match there. Third match of the night, we had the team of TMDK. That's Mad Mikey Nichols, Shane Haste, and Zack Sabre Jr., along with their young lion, Kosei Fujita. They defeated the team of Chaos, Hiroki Goto, Tomohiro Ishii, Yoshihashi, as they teamed with young lion Yuto Nakashima at 11 minutes and 28 seconds. And just like I said last week, and like we've been saying all throughout this tour, these Mighty Don't Kneel matches have really been excellent and just kind of been highlights of the tour. And this one was completely in line with that as well. In fact, I would say this was the highlight of the undercard of the show. And we had Sabre coming out here with his TV title. He is currently feuding with Ishii. They had a TV title match scheduled for the next night, as well as the TMDK tag team had that's Nichols and Hayes. They have a heavyweight tag team title shot against the team of Bishamon, Goto, and Yoshihashi. So this was effectively another preview match for two of the major matches coming up on the second night of the show. But this was really great. These guys all just were in there trading lots of offense and moves, and it was really all over the place. Just these guys just going at it the whole time. And most of the early portions of the match were, as I mentioned, previews for the TV title and the heavyweight tag team title feuds that were kind of ongoing. And it wasn't until we got till about like the 9-minute mark where all these guys had kind of got their shit in, and then eventually we wound up with a situation where Yuto Nakashima and Kosei Fujita are both tagged in, and they're just standing in the middle of the ring while all the veterans are on the outside. And this was a huge spotlight for these two guys in particular, both being young lions, and they're trading forearm shots, and eventually Fujita hits a drop kick, and after he hits the drop kick, somehow, I messed up there. Nakajima hits a drop kick and gets a Boston Crab on Fujita. And he's really, 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 really close to tapping out Fujita. And kind of the story here is Fujita's this underling who is he's sitting under the learning tree of the TMDK seniors, especially Zack Sabre Jr., and he's gaining all this technical prowess and acumen. And even in the midst of all that, he's still caught in a Boston Crab by his other young lion. I don't know. And it's really apparent that he's going to tap out from the Boston Crab. Eventually, Zack Sabre Jr. enters in to break it up, but had he not been there to break it up, Fujita would have tapped out. Yuto ends up clocking Fujita with a forearm, and they trade drop kicks, and eventually Fujita is able to apply the key lock armbar, the same one that he'd been using earlier on the tour, and he taps out Nakajima here. And this is the same move that he was sort of being taught by Zack Sabre Jr. So kind of a continuation of that story. And, the commentary team did a really great job kind of putting over the idea that, like, yes, he did a great job in getting what's known as the key lock or the Kimura lock, or, if you're familiar with it, Kushida uses the maneuver in the exact same way. He calls it the hoverboard lock. But they also were key to highlight that if Zack Sabre Jr. hadn't been there, we might have seen a different result, because Yuto Nakajima was very, very close to tapping out Fujita with the Boston Crab. So there's a lot of heat amongst all the young lions with Fujita for him kind of joining up with TMDK and sort of getting preferential treatment and kind of this mini push that's come along with it. So we move on to the fourth match of the night, and we have the team of Tama Tonga, Hikuleo, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and Master Wato as they're accompanied by Jado, and they defeated the Bull Club team of El Phantasmo, Kenta, Jay White, Taiji Ishimori with Gato, 12 minutes and 47 seconds. At the beginning of the match, we had a moment where Phantasmo and Jay White, they stopped quickly at the commentary to kind of jaw jack, and White vows that he will win the loser leaves Japan match against Hikuleo and kick Hikuleo out of Japan. And after that, we kind of end up in a situation where all throughout the match, these different Bullet Club heels are doing everything in their power to stay away from whichever counterpart they have on the opposite side of the match that is looking for comeuppance. So, in this match with GOD, you've got Hikuleo, who's looking to get his hands on Jay White. They've got the loser leaves Japan match coming up next week in Osaka. Tama Tonga is currently embroiled in a never openweight title feud with ELP, and that match is also coming up in Osaka. So again, another preview match here. Tanahashi will be facing off with Kenta in a special singles match, and then the same for Wato and Ishimori. So essentially 4 singles matches all kind of highlighted here. And the Bull Club team talked a big game, but as soon as the match started, every single one of them didn't want to start, and were looking for every way out to avoid having to face off against the man that they're, paired up against. As the match continued, though, we got a lot of great action here. Tanahashi sort of played the face in peril, was isolated by the Bull Club team, who used a lot of different cheating tactics. Down the stretch, some of the stuff that was really great, Tama Tonga looked awesome in his, high octane babyface offense and stuff he did with Phantasmo. They're doing a really good job showcasing the kind of like building hatred between those two guys. With Jay and Hikuleo, it's kind of interesting because I haven't heard a lot of talk lately. Initially, when they brought up this stipulation, there was a lot of buzz, but I haven't heard a lot lately. But within the confines of the match, Jay was doing everything in his power to stay away from this hulking monster in Hikuleo, who wants to get his hands on Jay White. And from time to time, he would get some good offense in, but Jay is so wily and conniving as a veteran that he was able to avoid a lot of the most dangerous offense from Hikuleo. Although down the stretch, Hikuleo was able to get a huge power slam on Jay White that kind of set up the finish of the match here. And then you sort of had Tanahashi and Kenta going at it, and Wato and Ishimori. We wound up towards the close of the match with your typical multi-man New Japan style close where everybody's running in and getting in their big offense and everyone's sort of getting laid out. And then eventually Jay and Hikuleo are on the outside, and they're I apologize. That's actually a match on the next night. What ends up happening is Wato and Ishimori are tagged in for the first time at about 10 minutes and 30 seconds, and Wato nails a flying forearm for a near fall. Kenta and Ishimori begin to work over Wato. They isolate him. Wato gets Jay White performs a dragon screw leg whip on Tanahashi, and Hikuleo tried to get a choke slam on Jay White, but instead he just shoves him over the top rope, so everybody's kind of getting laid out. And Tama comes in, hits a tongue and twist, and in the midst of all this confusion and everybody, sort of getting their offense in, Wato jumps in the ring being the legal man, and he hits a jackknife cover on Ishimori, who was not expecting it, for the 1-2-3 sort of out of nowhere. So they're telling a story here where both of these guys are wanting very badly to beat one another. That's Wato and Ishimori, and all throughout the match they did try to hit finishers and different big signature moves, and they were both able to kind of avoid that stuff. But Wato showed on this night that he was able to still get the 1-2-3 with the undercover pin on Ishimori. Fifth match of the night, we had the team of LIJ, Los Ingobernables de Japón, as they teamed up. We had the team of Hiromu Takahashi, Bushi, Shingo Takagi, and Sonata, and they defeated the team of Kazuchika Okada, Toru Yano, Ryuzuki Taguchi, and Yo. They defeated them at 11 minutes and 1 second. Yo and Hiromu Takahashi obviously have an IWGP Junior Heavyweight World Title match the next evening as well. Later on the tour, we have Okada taking on Shingo Takagi for the IWGP World Heavyweight title. So some good preview matches here. Plus, there's sort of this ongoing story with Sonata where he's kind of cold and coming up short in a lot of different situations. And that's been playing itself out all throughout the tour. Yo and Hiromu open up the match, and immediately they're trading stiff forearm shots, giving us a preview of what's to come. Yo ends up hitting a standing neck breaker. Sonata enters. He ties up Yano. A lot of comedy and shenanigans there. Shingo gets in. Him and Yano go at it. He glares at Okada. LIJ take turns working over Yano. Eventually, Okada tags in about 5 minutes. He hits a running back elbow against Shingo. Hits a DDT for the near fall. Okada ends up hitting a neck breaker over his knees, working the neck as he's known to do. And then eventually Taguchi enters, hits the 3 Migo suplexes on Shingo. Hits his butt offense, all of that. Around 10 minutes, Yo comes in, hits dragon screw leg whip on Hiromu. Bushi nails a dive through the ropes onto Okada. So again, we're getting that similar New Japan style finish where everybody is hitting their big stuff. But through the midst of all that, it leaves an isolated Taguchi in the match alone with Shingo Takagi. Shingo ends up hitting the last of the dragon sit out power bomb, power slam on Taguchi for the pin. 1-2-3, sort of heating him up a little bit in route to his challenge for Okada's world title. So good little preview there. And that brings us to the meat and potatoes of the evening. So the sixth match of the night, we had a IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team title match as the team of Yoshinobu Kanemaru and Doki from Just Four Guys. They challenged for the title against the United Empire team of Francesco Akira and TJP. And let me tell you guys, this match was really, really fantastic. I know that we've been saying that a lot about Francesco Akira and TJP, but this match just once again went to show you how impressive they are as a team. And let's take nothing away from Yoshinobu Kanemaru and Doki, because Kanemaru and Doki are on fire right now as well. For years, I've always known and heard that Kanemaru was this really legendary junior from Noah, and heard about a lot of the great matches he's had there. And I've seen some of them, including like the pretty famous match he had in Noah with Jushin Thunder Liger. That being said, I've never really loved Kanemaru in New Japan. I knew he was like very technically sound and, you know, relied a lot on cheating. And every now and again throughout the years, you'd see a little bit of a glimmer of the old Kanemaru come through, the guy that was more athletic, the guy that was a little bit more hardworking. And I'd heard some of that, and I like some of his offense, but I've never loved Kanemaru. On the opposite spectrum, I love Doki. I think Doki is one of the best junior wrestlers alive today, and someone that goes out there. We make the joke on the show that he doesn't want to go back to the dusty floors of Tijuana and Mexico City. He's not going back. He's here to stay. And that's because this guy really puts it all out there. He reminds me of almost like a junior Sabu mixed in with some other crazy daredevil guys that we've seen throughout the years. But lately, ever since the breakup of Suzuki-gun and this new unit, Just Four Guys, has been sort of mandated, Kanemaru has kind of become a guy that is a workhorse and is going out there and just fucking killing it. Getting into the match itself, TJP and Kanemaru started. TJP ends up hitting a corkscrew senton for a near fall in this match. Doki nailed a dive to the floor on TJP that was so freaking scary. Like, Tope Suicida is an apt name for this move because he looked like he landed right on his face. I thought he was dead, and he comes up completely fine, living up to the moniker of like one of the craziest wrestlers alive today. The heels end up working over TJP in the corner, which I don't know. I guess they're all heels essentially, but they end up working over TJP in the corner. And one of the stories in this match is they really try to isolate TJP's leg and take away his base and kind of put their targets on that. And that sort of became a story all throughout the match. Akira comes in, works over Doki. Akira hits a Doomsday Senton for a near fall at 6 minutes and 30 seconds. Kanemaru hits a double drop kick. Later on, TJP, he's kind of hobbling and selling the knee all throughout the match, and a lot of the stuff that he normally would hit, like the Mamba Splash and the different that sort of like that kick that he does in the corner, he's just having trouble doing all that. Every time he tries to put someone up, his leg's giving out. Him and TJP, him and Akira, they're trying to set up for a lot of their double team moves, and TJP is just unable to even base for a lot of that stuff. Eventually, around 15-minute mark, we get Doki applying the Doki Choki Triangle Choke on Akira. Doki ends up hitting a Widow's Peak neck breaker on Akira for near fall. We also get Kanemaru hitting a top rope moonsault on Francesco Akira as well. So after they took out TJP's leg, Francesco Akira was sort of just isolated here just a bit. Doki hits another Widow's Peak neck breaker for a believable near fall. TJP ends up making the save. We get a lot of near falls going down the stretch between these guys, back and forth, back and forth. TJP goes for a suplex, but Akira rotates it and lands on his feet. Francesco Akira hits a top rope double stomp on Doki's chest for a near fall. TJP ends up hitting a planche on the floor to Kanemaru. And at that point, we're left isolated in the ring with just Francesco, Akira, and Doki. Akira hits a swinging face plant on Doki and then a running double knees to the back of Doki's head, which is known as the fireball, to score the pinfall win. The last 5 minutes of this match were extremely back and forth with many believable near falls that were just out of this world. This match was really fantastic. I'm a little bit higher on this than I was for the junior heavyweight tag team title match at Wrestle Kingdom, which I went, I believe, about 4 on. This one I would go about 4.25. I heard our friends over at Super J-Cast, Joel Abraham, he said that he thought this was the best junior heavyweight tag team title match he's seen in years. I don't know if I'm quite that high on it, but there's a lot of buzz for this match and just a lot of a critical acclaim for it. Looking at Cage Match right now, just to kind of give you an idea, This is the second highest rated match of the evening. It's got an 8.48, so that's right about in line with about 4.25, which is where I'm at. So really, really great match. This is something where I'd say if you haven't seen it, go out of your way to check it out. We had some questions here. Ginger Ninja 666 says, do you think Yoshinobu Kanemaru deserves more respect than he gets? The guy is one of my favorites in New Japan for some reason, and I love it when he gets matches like this junior tag match to showcase how great he still is. And I got to tell you, Ginger Ninja 666, as I was saying earlier during the review, yes, I think that Kanemaru is a little bit underrated by some of the audience. Not everybody, but I think those old Noah heads probably know what Kanemaru has and what he's able to do. And at times we've seen Kanemaru just fit into these different roles, whether it's the wily veteran or, the veteran mentor in Suzuki-gun to the various different juniors that he teamed with. But lately since he's been put in this just four guys stable, I think he feels the need to kind of pull his own weight and go out there and kind of showcase the talents he still has available to him. So, yes, I think he's great, and I've just been really, really impressed with what I've seen out of him so far. So this match was awesome. The next match of the night was the semi-main event. We had Will Ospreay accompanied by the Great O'Khan as he took on and defeated Taichi, who was accompanied by Taka Michinoku. 22 minutes and 47 seconds. He beat him with the Stormbreaker. And I got to tell you guys, because I'm talking so much, I'm going to take a drink. These are typically the types of things that you would not hear me do as I hit the mute button, because I would have Jeremy on the other line sort of filling in the blank space. But it's impossible to talk this long and not get a break. And I'm back. So, this match was undoubtedly the match of the night. Will Ospreay and Taichi are magic with one another. Currently, this match is sitting at an 8.90, highest rated match of the night on Cage Match, and I have to concur. This was the match that I was most impressed with. It might even be possibly my match of the weekend for New Japan. Hard to say, but it's definitely in the running. And Will and Taichi, they've had quite a few matches against one another. I believe they currently stand going into this match. They were 2-2 prior to this match. And one of the interesting things is that prior to this match, Taichi had defeated Will Ospreay twice as a junior. But since Will has made the jump to heavyweight, and we're even talking about that time when he was sort of in that nebulous in-between stage where he was contending for the never openweight title, Will has defeated Taichi twice since that time. So this would have been the fifth and deciding match, and Will obviously defeated Taichi here, going 3-2 and sort of gaining the upper hand in their rivalry. But beyond that, Will has set this incredible task for himself that he has all these lofty goals in the next year he has to accomplish, otherwise he may leave New Japan. And this is all coming off of the tail end of him losing to Kenny Omega in the Tokyo Dome, losing the IWGP US Heavyweight Championship, and trying to present himself with some of the biggest challenges and tests. And in one of those challenges, he has wound up facing Taichi at the New Beginning in Taichi's hometown, no less. I liked that Taichi came out in an all-white entrance attire, which is something we've kind of seen him do in the past for big shows, but there's almost this feeling that with him getting rid of the bleach blonde in his hair, shedding Miho Abe from his company, and kind of just slowly but surely he's becoming a new reborn man, a different Taichi than what he's been in the past. And yeah, this match was fantastic, and a big part of the story was the idea that Taichi, being a disciple of Toshiaki Kawada, one of the four pillars of All Japan Pro Wrestling, him and Will Ospreay went out there with every intention to give us a King's Road style, Royal Road style All Japan head drop match, and that's exactly what they did. As soon as the bell rang, they immediately ran up to each other, traded mafia kicks, and then spin kicks to each other's thighs, big strikes. Ospreay ended up hitting a planche on the floor at the 2-minute mark. They brawled on the floor. They came back into the ring. Ospreay was sort of in charge at this point, hitting knee strikes to the back as Taichi was seated on the mat, giving him a big backbreaker and a knee for a near fall 5 minutes and 30 seconds. Taichi ended up kind of mounting a comeback, nailing a spin kick to the left shoulder and a clothesline. At this point, Ospreay starts breaking out some of that junior offense, hitting handspring back spin kicks, and they both go down for a double down at about the 8-minute mark. Ospreay hits a top rope flying forearm for a near fall. Taichi hit him with a Saito suplex. Ospreay started adding injury to insult, hitting Taichi in the face with Kawada kicks, and then he allowed Taichi to hit his own Kawada kicks. So they sort of went into this test of strength, sort of mano a mano. I'll hit you, you'll hit me, and they started exchanging Kawada kick sequences, which was really fucking crazy. Taichi ended up switching to a spin kick to the chest at about 12 minutes, and Ospreay started laying in with some really, really hard chops. Ospreay falls to his knees, and Taichi clocks him with a spin kick to the head. At that point, we get to a point in the match where Ospreay is going for the hidden blade, but Taichi counters that with his sumo forearm shot, which was just an incredible moment. That's about 14 minutes in the match. Ospreay ends up hitting a super tiger Liger bomb, then goes for an Os cutter, gets a near fall at 16 minutes. Taichi set Ospreay up for a Styles Clash, but instead drops him high on his neck, so he ends up giving him essentially a Gonzo bomb, which was insane. Taichi hits a running clothesline to the back of the neck for a near fall, then a drop kick, then a back suplex, the dangerous suplex for a near fall. Ospreay hits him with the Poison Rana 19 minutes. Taichi goes for... he actually went up. Ospreay goes up for a Super Oz cutter. Taichi moves out of the way and then hits the Gedo clutch for a really believable near fall. And then coming out of that, Ospreay hits him with the hidden blade forearm to the back of the head. He tries to go for Stormbreaker. Taichi avoids it. Ospreay hits a back suplex, but Taichi pops up, showing his fighting spirit. Ospreay hits a hidden blade to the front, to the jaw for a very close near fall. And then after that, they trade more forearm shots. Ospreay hits another hidden blade, and then a Stormbreaker, and scores the pinfall in what can just be classified as a fantastic, fantastic classic match. This may be the best match of Taichi's career that I've seen. I don't know. He's had some really awesome matches over the past few years, and I feel like the match they had with one another in late 2018, which was a number one contendership for the Never Openweight title, kind of kick-started some of that buzz for this reinvigorated and reinvented Taichi. And this sort of was a great companion piece to that match. I was just blown away by both guys. And I know that they both have the goods, but this was like the best of modern New Japan mixed with some of the best stylings, spots, and psychology from All Japan. If you haven't seen this match, I don't know what you're doing. You need to go out of your way and check this out. I'm 4.5 on it, and I just loved it. 22 minutes, 47 seconds, Stormbreaker. Will Ospreay gets the win here. I had a couple questions. Pearl Poppy asked, now that Taichi is a faction leader, do you think his ceiling has raised in regards to what he can accomplish in the company? I really thought he had a chance to beat Ospreay here just because he recently became the top guy of a faction. And, I gotta say, I think it's always a really good sign when someone is made the leader of a faction. However, I'm not entirely convinced that just 4 guys is a finished unit. You hear the commentary team sort of allude that there's some missing pieces, and I sort of get that same indication myself. Now, moving forward, matches like this do nothing but endear someone like Taichi to management. Now, hopefully they don't go the way of, say, like an Ishii and just use him as a utility player in big spots and big moments, but they actually invest in the guy and potentially push him. And the one thing he does have going for him, like you mentioned, is being the de facto leader of faction, although they never have come out and officially said or stated that he is the true leader of whatever this faction is going to be. That being said, I didn't think that he was going to beat Will Ospreay just because Will recently took a really big loss against Kenny Omega, and he's in the midst of this redemption story arc. And sure, they could have gone that way, giving him a surprising loss, and that might have meant some pretty big things for him and Taichi going into New Japan Cup in the next couple months. But I think the safe bet here always was that Ospreay would pick up the win. But these guys did a hell of a job here and did everything in their power to really make sure that both guys were made here. Rich Latta asked, seeing as how Will Ospreay's career, this is facetious, was ended at the Tokyo Dome by Kenny Omega, how did he manage to have a hot match with Taichi that I've seen people going from 4.25 to 4.5 stars on? And, you know, the simple answer, Rich, is his career wasn't ended. He's fine. And I think we're going to see great things out of him moving into the rest of this calendar year. So that is going to bring us to the main event of the evening. And we had a special singles match as Shota Umino was defeated by Tetsuya Naito, 32 minutes. Yes, you heard that right. 32 minutes and 11 seconds via the Destino. And this match was pretty decisive, or I don't know if that's the right word, but people are feeling some kind of way about this match. Currently, it's sitting on Cage Match with 85 votes. Has a match guide rating of 6.19, which is around 3 stars, you know? And with that being said, I mean, there's 3 stars and then there's 3 stars. And when you have a 32-minute plus match that is being rated by many at around the 3-star mark, and then others who are much more negative on the match at an even lower rating, that's not necessarily a good thing. But let's talk about the match here. So, you know, Umino, this was one that I was pretty high on. Naito's had a really great accounting of himself in recent months, especially coming off of that fantastic mini feud he had with Will Ospreay in the summer. And then ever since Umino's return, he's looked really good. Sure, there's been some things that seem to be missing from his game, but who doesn't have issues like that when they come back from excursion? And ever since him and Naito have been on the opposite sides of programs going back to December for the road to Tokyo Dome, these guys have seemed to just have it out for one another and really just laying into each other, brawling on the outside of various different multi-man matches. And every single time I've seen them work with each other in that environment, it's been really great. So, and then that combined with Shota Umino's recent match with Will Ospreay, which was several matches with Will Ospreay, which were really great as well. I thought that these guys were going to go out there and kill it, to be honest with you. And leading into the match, Chris Charlton was talking on the commentary, talking about how there's a rocket ship strapped to Shota Umino. He's getting ready to be launched into superstardom. And when the match started out, I mean, I don't know. We got a lot of basic reversals and, you know, extensive filling out process. Very, very slow in the beginning. Naito stalling on the floor, trying to regroup, trying to, you know, regain his composure and ice out Shota Umino. They go to the floor. They do some brawling, which was pretty good. And then Naito ends up whipping Umino into a guardrail, and they do the count out spot. He barely gets into the ring before being counted out. We're at the 9-minute mark, and I mean, I don't have much to say. Like, they did some feeling around, they did some brawling on the outside, but it was pretty slow, a lot of stalling. And then from there, there's just like a lot of groundwork. Naito's keeping him grounded, leg locks, the ones, you know, if you've seen a Naito match, you know it. He does the Yave style leg lock around the neck. At one point, Shota hits a Northern Light suplex for near fall. He applies a STF on the mat. We're about 13 minutes, 30 seconds in. And it's not necessarily that this was bad at this point. It's just there wasn't a lot of action. Okay, there was one point where they did like a running the ropes high spot, exchange, and Umino did the Naito pose where he rolled onto the ground and did the LIJ thing, the standoff. But that was about the biggest high point of the entire match. Later on, Naito hits a tornado DDT on Shota hits a tornado DDT on Naito. Naito hits him with a Rude Awakening standing neck breaker. They both go down. That's about the 16-minute mark. We're like halfway through the match. Then Umino goes back to an STF. So we're kind of at this point where it's starting to feel kind of weird, where like we're not getting a lot of exchanges and spots, and something just feels kind of off. These guys are doing a lot of ground submissions and sort of just laying in, they call it a rest hold, and I know that they're trying to they've teased that Shota Umino is very prolific and experienced when it comes to this STF, but I don't know, man. Eventually, Umino hits an enziguri, then a spinning neck breaker, 23 minutes and 30 seconds in. Naito hits him with a side slam for a near fall, then a spine buster. He goes for a Destino. Umino blocks it, hits a stuffed pile driver. They're down at the 26-minute mark. At this point, we're getting pile drivers and other near falls, so it's picking up a little bit. But then we start getting these moments where they're setting up for stuff and they're stumbling and they seem lost, and Umino's repeating moves, and eventually Naito hits him with a brain buster. They go for a double down. It seems like they're not able to like kind of collect or figure out exactly what they're going for, what they're trying to do. We crossed the 30-minute mark, and I'm like flabbergasted that the match has gone this long. Naito goes for a Destino. Shota Umino avoids it, hits a DDT. He gets a very close near fall. Naito hits the Destino at that. After that, he hits the running Destino for a believable near fall. Then he hits a third Destino or a second Destino. I can't count. Scores the pinfall. I don't know, man. At this point, Umino is dejected. He struggles to get to his feet. They kind of look like maybe they're going to shake hands, but then Naito tosses the defiant Umino through the ropes to the floor. He gets on the mic. He tells the crowd, to come back the next night for Hiromu, sends them off happy. He does the LIJ roll call to end the show. What I would call this match, honestly, if I'm just being completely blunt and honest, is not very good. It reminded me in a lot of ways of Naito's match with Kenta when he back at the beginning part of 2020 and the early part of just pre-pandemic, where that was an overly long match that I also did not think was very good, but it did have a hot closing sequence because Naito hits a gusher and is bleeding all over the place, and people really loved that. But that one also went an unnecessarily long amount of time and didn't have very much heat all throughout of it. Same thing here. In fact, I'll tell you guys this much. I asked for questions, and I've got the most questions and comments for any subject on this show tonight for this match in particular, which kind of tells you a lot of people had some pretty strong feelings and opinions about this match. That being said, I will get this out of the way. I'm hearing a lot of people talking about the blowback from the fan base about what happened here. Because I had a pretty busy weekend, I try to stay spoiler free and have not really engaged too much with the online community. So I can imagine what the reception and response to all this has been, but I'm not intimately familiar with it all. But let's read some of these comments and you'll kind of get an idea. So Rambone Slam Pig said, in my opinion, Shota Naito wasn't up to the New Japan main event standard. Shota seemed to not know what to do when Naito was pandering to the crowd or slowing things down, and the crowd were behind Naito despite Shota being positioned as the babyface. What's the next step for Shota Umino? And I gotta agree, if that was another thing, is he was coming in as sort of like the quasi babyface, but you've got the anti-hero in Naito, and the crowd was probably split like 95 for Naito and 5% for Umino, which was not a good look for a guy that they do have big plans for. And then, yes, they did get lost in this match. There was a lot of slowing down. I don't want to pull back the curtains too much, but there are different styles of working a wrestling match, and one of the most complex and difficult is the style that they do in New Japan Pro Wrestling specifically. And if you're a young guy coming back from excursion like Shota Umino and you're not used to working a 32-minute main event, it's going to be difficult with that kind of learning curve. I don't want to make excuses for the guy because it is what it is. This wasn't up to the standard, but let's not forget that this is Shota Umino's first major main event ever. Okay, there is that. There's also the fact that a lot of guys that come back from excursion are not ready for this type of test. I mean, they didn't put Jay White and Great O'Khan in similar situations, which does tell you that the company has a lot of faith in a guy like Shota Umino. But at the same time, there's very few guys that come back from excursion that could just out the gate do this sort of task. So it was a big test. I don't think he necessarily passed. As far as what's next for him, I couldn't tell you. I think there is a narrative here because of the fact that, we as fans oftentimes will fill in the gaps for some of these story points in New Japan, especially since things are very open-ended. But we've seen where they've been able to take real-life occurrences, people that have suffered kayfabe and shoot losses and had struggles and difficulties, and they've worked it into the actual narrative itself. So, I mean, even if he'd had a great match, the very fact that he was going to lose kind of lends itself to the idea that Shota Umino was going to have a big setback and needed to work up back up the ladder. And that's kind of even more true. I'm just kind of trying to give you the silver lining here. Obviously, you don't want to put on a match like this on a big show like this. That sucks. But at the same time, I don't think it's unsalvageable is what I'm trying to get at. So as far as what's next for him, I don't know, but you would have to imagine that the New Japan Cup is going to be part of that. So Stale Burger Bun asks, now that Shooter's confirmed, this is again facetious, as a flop as the future ace of the company, should New Japan go all in on Master Wato instead? And I would say no. But one thing I would say is look at where Wato is now, and it's been years since he returned in the middle of the pandemic, and he also had issues during his excursion, and people had high hopes for him prior to him returning. A lot of these guys were deeply affected by what went on with COVID-19, and it definitely affected their excursions. And we know for a fact, based on the reports from inside sources, that Umino was not immune to that whatsoever. So, and it's taken a lot of time for Wato to get back to where he is right now to be a viable contender and be a trustworthy talent. And so I'm not totally surprised that Shota Umino has had some issues here. Pearl Poppy asked, what do you think is the best path forward for Shota Umino? Should New Japan keep putting him in main event matches with their top level guys? Or should he go back down the card and try to progress / get over more organically? And that's a great question. It's pretty difficult to say specifically. I do think that, he kind of had a shortcut a little bit to a certain degree when they teamed him up with Mox, and Mox was so over, and I don't know how much that meant to the Japanese fan base. It might have meant more to a Western audience, but it definitely was something that endeared him to the fan base regardless. And now he's having to kind of get over on his own, and he's essentially, in some regards, I'm hearing people say he's like a dollar store Tanahashi. And I also saw people talking about how him and Naito looked similar to one another, and it was almost like Umino was the young version of himself having to close the loop on himself, if you've ever seen Looper. And that's a great observation, actually. in the fact that a lot of people look at someone like Tanahashi and they're familiar with his history, but they're not familiar with his early history, and they don't understand how long it took for him to work his way up the ranks and get to a place where the fans accepted him and he was that ace level character who carried the company. There was a point in time, probably first like 3 or 4 years of his career, that if you told fans watching Tanahashi that he would one day be the most prolific, champion of his era and a guy that would save the company, they would call you crazy and say you were lying, because he had a lot of ups and downs and a lot of struggles. And, I see people kind of comparing Shota Umino to Kazuchika Okada, and being like, well, Okada had the one mishap and then turned around and was this prodigy and was, this super talent. Well, it's like, yeah, and Okada's one of maybe 5 of the greatest wrestlers that has ever lived, and he's 1 in a million. There's not anyone else like him. It might take time for Shota Umino to reacclimate to the company. It also might take time for the fans to accept him. When Great O'Khan first came in, he had a great gimmick and everything, but his matches, and actually I would say to this date, he's had some very good matches, but I don't know that Great O'Khan outside of tags in a singles capacity has had a truly great match just yet. But his work has improved, his character work has improved, and people have come to really love and accept him for a lot of different reasons. And, I don't think you want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're still very, very much early into the Shota Umino experience and experiment. As far as what they should do next, I think that they should stay the course. I think that they should. Now, do I think he should be in 32-minute main events when he's not ready for that? No, I don't think so. I think you need to accentuate the positives, hide the negatives, and figure out what's the best aspect of this kid's personality and skill set and go with that. Right now, like I mentioned, he kind of looks like Tanahashi. Do I think that down the road we might see a character change, a change in attire and look and everything? I mean, yes, this kid's only 25. He's got a long career ahead of him. And what you're seeing right now is not the finished product, It reminds me of like Katsuhiko Nakajima. You watch him in 2009, 2010, he's a whole world different from what you see in 2022, 2021, we have to give these guys time to grow. But I don't think they should de-push him. I just think that they need to figure out the best way to utilize him.
If you're looking to move out of your parents' place, you could really cut expenses by bundling your car and renter's insurance with Progressive, which is good because your little brother has gotten really territorial. You're blood related. You'd think it would be fine to share food in the fridge. I mean, who writes their name on every individually wrapped slice of cheese, Tyler? Still, you've got to admire the commitment. So bundle your renter's and car insurance with Progressive and use the savings to help you move out and have all the cheese you want. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Coverage provided and serviced by affiliates and third-party insurers.
Ginger Ninja 666 says, do you think the concern people have been showing towards Shota Umino has been overblown slightly? And like I said, I haven't seen the online discourse, but I have to imagine that if you're watching just this one match and you're saying to yourself, this kid doesn't have the goods, he's done, that's a bit short-sighted. And, remind me not to necessarily take your opinion on wrestling because he's shown time and time again that he's got a lot of upside, and this company is very, very much invested in going with him as a future ace, a future top guy. I mean, we can tell that. I mean, compare and contrast his return from excursion from, any number of guys since Jay White. There's very few guys that have come in and been given the same sort of platform that Shota Umino's being given right now. So, I think it is a bit overblown. Okay, 890 said, I'm sure you'll probably address this, but just in case, a lot of people have been really pretty harsh on Umino because of the Naito performance. Some people have already formed an opinion that Shota Umino does not have it. What's your general opinion on Shota in the Naito match? Was it all bad? And I got to tell you, I do think it was pretty much all bad. I think that they had like 2 or 3 decent things, but for the most part, I thought it was pretty bad. Do I think he was bad mechanically at wrestling? No, not at all. Except for actually down the tail stretch, yeah, they started botching a lot. They started stumbling around, and that was probably due to nerves and frustration and being blown up, and doesn't help things. But prior to that, like mechanically, no, I thought he was fine. It's the other stuff. It's the psychology. It's the reading of your opponent. It's understanding how to do the right things at the right time to get the right reactions. And those are all things that are missing right now. And I think that they need to work with him on that. Dom Homie 101 said, thoughts on a potential Shota Umino, and what is his ceiling in New Japan? In my opinion, Shota is the man that the company are behind, and I think they're doing right by him so far. I think people need to relax and let him grow. You become a main eventer talent by working with main event talent. And yeah, Dom Homie 101, I have to agree with you. I think that in order to become a top talent, you have to work with top talent. And unfortunately, prior to now, he hasn't been given the opportunity too much to actually do a lot of that, especially not in this capacity. And yeah, if I continue on, I'll be repeating a lot of the same points that I made there. I think I concur with what you've sort of said there, but there's no doubt the company is very much behind him. And let's give it some time, guys. I mean, granted, was this a failed test? Yes, but it was the first test. If we're like in Dom Mysterio territory and it's 2 years later and he's not only not improved but he's regressed, then we might need to start having a conversation, or who knows, maybe even 6, 7, 8 months down the line. But this kid hasn't even had a G1 yet. You know what I mean? So let's cool it for just a minute, and let's not be so reactionary, and let's give him some time to grow. Do I think the company should be relying on him to draw houses and set him up to fail in big spots like this? No. But again, I did mention earlier, there might be an opportunity down the line for these guys to run it back in a big situation. And can you imagine what the video package or the video essays might look like when Shota Umino had this big failure in Hokkaido, in Sapporo against Umino, against Naito in his first big match? Like, I think that's a great story, even if it wasn't intended. It's there. Finally, Dongbar1 said, even though I think that everyone is jumping the gun on Umino, do you think that the real problem is the crowds just aren't interested in him so far? Naito was trying his best to get some sort of sympathy for Umino, but it felt like they didn't have any. When Umino had the advantage, the crowd was cheering on Naito. Do you think it had to do with the typical young gun versus established vet match structure and the weird crowd dynamic? And yeah, I think that those are all really great points as well. I think, thank you guys for the comments and the questions. You're making my job easy. There's a lot of really great thoughts and insight here. Looking into what you said here, though, I mean, Naito's one of, if not the biggest star in the company, and in my opinion, didn't do a lot leading into the match to come off as a domineering dick heel, He sort of just did his Naito shtick, and they sort of set up Umino to be this new, young, up-and-coming, star. And he laid out Naito and everything like that. And if you're a fan of Naito and you're a fan of LIJ, why would you? And also Naito's got the big match coming up with Muto and everything like that. I mean, there's just a lot kind of going against people to want to cheer against Tetsuya Naito. Plus, Umino is so young in his career at this point. I mean, there might be a little bit of that. We're feeling from a fan perspective that he's being force-fed down our throats, sort of like the Roman Reigns, sort of like the John Cena thing, sort of like Tetsuya Naito in his early Stardust Genius years, where it's like they haven't given the fans a lot of reason to care about him aside from the fact that he carries around a Death Rider jacket, from Jon Moxley. I do think that he needs to find something that belongs to him, so that the fans can believe in him and care about him. And they haven't really done a great job of that just yet. And it's going to be hard for them to lay out a match where he's getting sympathy if Naito's not really doing anything in the match to garner that sympathy, anything that's truly sadistic or malicious, and Umino's not giving them something to connect with. So, yeah, all good stuff there. Let's jump into night 2 of New Beginning in Sapporo. So we started off the evening with the United Empire team of Francesco Akira, Great-O-Khan, TJP, and Will Ospreay. They defeated the team of just 4 guys: Doki, Taichi, Taka Michinoku, Yoshinabu Kanemaru, 10 minutes and 11 seconds. At the tail end of this match, Will Ospreay ended up isolated alone with Taka Michinoku. He hit Taka with a Michinoku driver to try and add insult to injury. Went for the 1-2-3, Taka kicked out, and then he hit him with the hidden blade to get the decisive victory. This was obviously a continuation of the matches we'd seen the night prior between Will Ospreay and Taichi, as well as Francesco Akira and TJP against Doki and Kanemaru. At the end of the match, Great-O-Khan cut a promo in the middle of the ring with all 4 members of the United Empire, mentioned how they had 3 major titles, and were all 4 very big stars, and that the wrestling world was essentially theirs. So very good opening match. Like I've been mentioning, love just 4 guys, love United Empire. This has been a really great feud for everybody involved. And we move on. Second match of the night, we had the team of El Desperado, Minoru Suzuki, Ren Narita, and Yuto Nakashima defeating the House of Torture team of Dick Togo, Evil, Sho, and Yujiro Takahashi, 10 minutes and 19 seconds. And this match was in many ways very similar to the preview match that we saw the night prior. Some of the things that were worth making mention of, we started to see more cohesiveness between Suzuki, Desperado, and namely Ren Narita. We did get the House of Torture attacking at the beginning of the bell again. Kevin Kelly on commentary kept bringing up the idea that the House of Torture had the 6-man belts, and will they ever defend them, because they haven't defended them in quite a while. And again, House of Torture did everything in their power to isolate the young lion and kind of work over him. We did get a moment in the middle of the match where everybody was on the outside, where Evil and Minoru Suzuki started fighting at the guardrail, and they Evil took a mic and shoved it in Minoru Suzuki's face. I don't think they're going to do a singles match, but if they do, it almost kind of felt like they could go into an I Quit match-esque kind of territory there. But House of Torture isolated Suzuki, started working him over in the corner. Evil choked him with his shirt. Narita ends up getting the hot tag from Suzuki. He comes in, hits the S kick, or ends up hitting kicks to Evil's chest, hits Northern Light suplex with high bridge for near fall. Yujiro Takahashi gets tagged in, hits a Fisherman Buster on Narita for a near fall at 9 minutes and 30 seconds. He tries to set up a pimp juice and jumping DDT. Ren blocks it. Ren hits a Northern Light suplex on Yujiro. And then he ties him up in the middle of the ring with the Cobra Twist and gets the 1-2-3, 10 minutes, 19 seconds. We did have a question here from OK890. With Yujiro taking pins instead of Dick Togo and Yuto, do you think House of Torture will soon get a new heavyweight? And I don't know that I necessarily think that. My thinking here was the night prior, Dick Togo was the one that took the loss. Next after that, Yujiro takes the loss. And I mean, you could make the argument that Sho, being a junior, should have been the next one to be defeated. But I think since Narita's a heavyweight and Yujiro is a pretty low-ranked heavyweight, it makes sense for them to kind of continue things there. Plus, Dick Togo's not one of the 6-man tag team champions. So it did necessitate in order for Desperado, Suzuki, and Narita to challenge for those titles, I think they kind of needed to have Narita beat one of those guys here. So I'm not sure that this was as much a sign that they're going to oust Yujiro and bring in an outsider, as much as it is just a natural progression of the story. But yeah, after Yujiro tapped out, we got a moment where Narita is aligning himself with Desperado and Suzuki. They all stood in the middle of the ring. They shook hands. Huge pop for the very first time. Suzuki gets on the mic and he says that the three of them are officially on the same page for the first time ever, and he's challenging House of Torture for the never openweight six-man tag team titles. Evil gets on the mic and says the belts are retired. They're not going to defend them. The crowd boos. Suzuki says he wants a title match next Saturday in Osaka. So we're going to have news on that here in just a little bit. Third match of the night, we had the Bull Club team of Taiji Ishimori and Kenta. They defeated Hiroshi Tanahashi and Master Wato, 10 minutes and 41 seconds. Tanahashi and Kenta, again, this is a preview match for the upcoming shows later on in the tour for next week in Osaka. And I didn't love this match in many ways. It was somewhat similar to the 8-man tag that we'd seen with the similar group the night prior. But, it was fine. It was fine for what it was. After, going down the stretch, we started getting the moment where all these guys were working on one another, and eventually Kenta and Tanahashi end up on the outside. And while they're on the outside, we get Kenta and, we get Ishimori and Master Wato on the inside, trying their best to best one another. Ishimori obviously angry that he was pinned clean the night prior. And while this is going on, Tanahashi hits a senton to the floor on Kenta, leaving both of them, kind of out of the match. Back in the ring, Wato ends up getting his head struck on an exposed steel in the corner where the turnbuckle pad had been removed. Ishimori, in the meantime, rolls him up, schoolboy roll up with his feet on the ropes for the cheap win. 1, 2, 3. And after the match is over, Ishimori and Kenta, they attempt to jump Master Wato. Tanahashi comes in and makes the save, and we get the big standoff. So early on in the match, too, Tanahashi and Kenta, when they first started, they were kind of teasing, playing up to the crowd, and getting a lot of crowd support. And right when they got all the crowd support for them to face off against one another, Kenta tagged out. It was a pretty funny moment, but not a lot to say here. Match was fine, but the interesting thing, Ishimori, I guess clean win. Cheap pinfall win, kind of cheating, but he gets the win here. And the night prior, Wato sort of got an unexpected win. So neither guy able to show that they're better than the other, but both of them picking up 1, 2, 3s over one another in these preview matches. Fourth match of the night, we had the team of Hikuleo, Tama Tonga, and Jado from Gorillas of Destiny, and they defeated the Bullet Club team of Jay White, El Phantasmo, and Gedo at 12 minutes and 57 seconds. To start the match off, Jay White stopped at the commentary team again, ripped into his opponents, talked about how he's going to oust this guy away from New Japan forever in Hikuleo. Tama and ELP start. They've developed an intense dislike for one another, and they're really showing that here. Very good action all over the place with these guys. Lots of cheating tactics from the Bull Club team again. Around the 7-minute mark, Hikuleo ends up making a hot tag. Jay White scrambles, tries to get away. Hikuleo's House of Fire beating up Gato and ELP on the floor. When he gets Jay White alone in the ring, they are trading chops. Hikuleo hits a Mafia kick. He double clotheslines ELP and Gato, so he's just really trying to do everything in his power to get his hands on Jay White and keep these other guys out of the match. Jay White ends up working over Hikuleo in the corner. Hikuleo sets up for a chokeslam. Jay White escapes, hits a DDT. Both guys are down. Double tag to Tama and ELP at the 10-minute mark. They're brawling again. Tama hits all his big offense, Stinger Splash, Bulldog Power Slam. Tries to go for the gun stun. ELP avoids it. Gets a roll up for a near fall. They're trading stiff forearm shots. They hit a simultaneous cross body block. And then Gedo and Jado get tagged into the ring 11 minutes and 30 seconds. Obviously, a lot of history between Gedo and Jado. They're the two legal men in the ring. Hikuleo hits a power slam on Jay White. This is what I started to mention on the first night, but I got confused. And at that point, Jay White heads out to the outside of the ring. This is on the tail end of the spot that they do in all these multi-man matches where everybody's in, gets all their shit in. And there's a lot of confusion. Jay White is acting like he's trying to lure Hikuleo out of the match and wants him to come fight him down the rampway. While this is going on, the referee is focusing on the outside, and you've got Gedo and Jado on the inside. And Gedo grabs the brass knuckles. He tries to hit Jado. Jado avoids it. Tama hits Gedo with the gun stun. Jado applies the Jado crossface, and Gedo taps out. After the match, Phantasmo hits Tama Tongue in the head with the never openweight title belt after the bell. Really good match here. A much better preview than the night before. Both ELP and Tama in the White Hikuleo matches were highlighted and showcased in really great ways here. And at this point, seeing this, I'm a lot more excited for both of those forthcoming matches next week. After that, we had the fifth match of the night. Excuse me. Kazuchika Okada, Toru Yano, Ryosuke Taguchi, and Shota Umino. They defeated the LIJ team of Tetsuya Naito, Shingo Takagi, Bushi, and Sonata 11 minutes and 2 seconds. And this, again, was another great preview match for Okada and Shingo for the world title. And then, I guess that's really all that was being previewed here. The night prior, we had seen Shota Umino and Tetsuya Naito, and they're back in the ring with one another again. And I was a little upset because they did, again, like I mentioned earlier, they're in a multi-man match. They're trying to get heat between these two guys. Match starts. Umino nails a shotgun dropkick on Naito at the bell, shoves the ref to the mat, and starts hitting Naito in the corner. Lots of heat here. I thought Chris Charlton did a great job talking about how Naito had talked about Umino being frustrated after losing to him the day prior, and Umino wanting an immediate rematch. Good fire between these two guys. They traded forearm shots. Naito ended up hitting a standing neck breaker. I don't know where this heat was the night prior, but it was non-existent in that match, but it was here on this evening. Yano gets in the match, middle of the match, lots of silly offense and spots with him and Bushi, him and Sonata, very similar to the night prior. Okada ends up getting tagged in as well as Sonata, and Sonata does a great job early on. Big offense on pretty much all the members of Chaos/Hantai. But at the 7-minute mark, Okada hits a drop kick. Both guys go down. Okada hits a flapjack on Sonata. He applies the money clip. Sonata gets out of that. He applies the skull ends dragon sleeper on Okada. Naito and Shota get back in the ring. They're trading more offense. Bushi hits Taguchi on the outside with the tope suicida. And in the ring, we wind up alone with Okada and Sonata. Okada hits a tombstone pile driver and then a rainmaker clothesline and then a second one on Sonata for the win and the pinfall. 1, 2, 3. Very good match here. At the end, Okada was bleeding from a cut on his back/right shoulder. Shingo and Okada are arguing at one another some more after the bell. So as the night prior, we saw Shingo pick up a 1, 2, 3 over Taguchi to heat him up going into the world title match next week. Okada picks up the 1, 2, 3. But the interesting thing here is not over Bushi, who typically would be your designated pin eater. It's over Sonata, who has been very, very cold for weeks on end and has been on a somewhat of a losing streak. And you have to kind of wonder where this story is going. But, one time him and Okada were considered generational rivals of some sort, even though Okada holds the vast majority of the victories in their feud with one another. That's how they used to, position it. But at this point, that seems very long ago, and Okada's at the top of the sport. And Sonata is like outside the top 6. He seems to be just kind of like a middle of the road guy at this point, maybe even lower. So very, very interesting to see where this story is going to be taking him moving forward. But we get to the 6th match of the night, top 3 matches, and I got to tell you, I liked, even though I think that the first night might have peaked the highest, potentially, maybe not, but potentially, with the match between Will Ospreay and Taichi. The match that they had here, or this series of 3 matches at the top of the card, might be more consistently better and be the stronger of the 2 nights. And we wound up with a match here. Bishamon, Hiroki Goto, and Yoshihashi, they successfully defended their titles and defeated the mighty Don't Kneel, Shane Haste, and Mad Mikey Nichols. They retained the titles at 15 minutes and 19 seconds. This match was really awesome. I didn't get to see a lot of TMDK and the work that they were doing during the World Tag League because I took that tour off, and thanks to Jeremy and other contributors, they kind of covered that while I was out. But I got a taste of it here. Now, the video package did show that TMDK were defeated on one of the final nights of World Tag League by the eventual tournament winners, Bishamon, who would go on to win the World Tag Team titles in the Tokyo Dome against FTR. And now we're here after, a defeat in a multi-man tag team match on 1-5 at New Year's Dash. Team DK made their intentions known that they wanted another title shot, or their first ever title shot, I should say. And they got it here. And this match was really, really, really awesome. It started off with a lot of, classic grappling between both teams. We started off with Goto and Mikey Nichols. Soon, Nichols and Shane Haste were tagging in and out, kind of isolating Goto. We got a moment where everybody brawled to the outside. Yoshihashi hits a senton on Haste. They're on the floor. In the ring, Nichols gets a neck breaker on Goto for a near fall at 4 minutes and 30 seconds. TMDK worked over Goto in their corner. Then at one point, Goto whips Mikey Nichols into his own corner, and Mikey Nichols did this incredible flare flip over the ropes, and just crashed to the floor. It was just really something. It was really, really awesome. Eventually, around the 7-minute, 30-second mark of the match, Yoshihashi gets a hot tag from Goto after he'd been worked on for a majority of the match. He gets a standing neck breaker on Haste for a near fall. TMDK hit a tower suplex on Yoshihashi from the corner. Kevin Kelly called it the Olivia Newton Bomb, which was really funny because that's not the name of the move. But Yoshihashi eventually comes back. He hits a hunter flipping neck breaker on Shane Haste. Goto gets the double bulldog at 12 minutes. They're trading forearm shots with Nichols. Goto gets his neck breaker over the knee for a near fall. The Ushigoroshi. Bishamon sets up for the Shoto, but there was a miscommunication as to whether they were going for Shoto or one of their other moves because they look similar, and Team DK was able to avoid it, and they hit the same move on Goto that they had hit. I don't know if this is their finisher, but it's sort of like a DDT, but it's like an elevated double team DDT. It's the same move that they beat Goto with on January the 5th at New Year's Dash, and they got a really close near fall. Goto kicks out. Then Mikey Nichols hits a Blue Thunder Bomb on Goto for another close near fall. But eventually, Yoshihashi gets in the ring. He's able to break things up, get Shane Haste out of there. They hit the Shoto and the slam on Mikey Nichols for the clean pinfall. Really, really good tag match here. I don't think it was as good necessarily as, say, the FTR versus Bishamon match, or even Bishamon versus Aussie Open from the Tokyo Dome and from the World Tag League Finals. But nonetheless, a very, very good title defense. I'd probably go like 3 3/4 on this one. And for a 15-minute match, it was just really great. Lots of back and forth. I was very impressed with both teams. We have some questions here Rambo and Slam Pig said, is it just me, or are both of the tag divisions in New Japan much stronger now than they've been in years past? Do you think it's just happenstance or a change in booking philosophy that is emphasizing stronger and more cohesive teams and less hot potato booking with the belts? And, I got to tell you, Rambo and Slam Pig, I'm not quite sure. One thing I think it could be, there's definitely been some changes in booking. I don't know if that means changes on the booking committee. I don't know who's making the suggestions. Obviously, Gato is, to my knowledge and understanding, still the head booker, but there's definitely been some changes. Now, as far as like the tag team divisions go, I think one of the things that's been happening, and you guys could say I'm wrong, maybe I'm crazy, but I think the emphasis on tag team wrestling in the West, especially with the influence from AEW, that might be permeating just a little bit into Japan and into New Japan, namely, to kind of influence them. The other thing, too, is they have so much talent in New Japan currently and so many names. And it's sort of like, what do we do with all these guys? And, there's only so much time and opportunity for all these different individuals. It makes a lot of sense for them to go ahead and invest and expand their tag team divisions to create more viable opportunities for underutilized talent. And that's sort of what I think is also pushing a lot of this. I mean, you look at the Catch-22 tag team, and sure, that group, United Empire, was always going to have juniors and, have someone to push. And I think long-term, Francesco Akira is probably the guy that they're looking to kind of establish as their, like, quote-unquote junior ace of the group. But both of those guys have so much talent in TJP and Francesco Akira, but they didn't have a direct purpose in the junior division at that time. And so it made all the sense in the world to kind of just unify them. And then a lot of these teams are doing such great work. It just makes sense for them to kind of showcase and highlight it. So I think it's hand in hand. I think it's the booking and I think it's the management, but I think it's also a lot of the talent as well. It's not just all creative, I don't think. And yeah, I don't think it took much for them to heat up these tag divisions. I think having the two tournaments in December at the same time was probably a big creative success, even if there were things to kind of complain about it. Just the fact that they're both being emphasized on equal playing levels and giving opportunity to all these different talents, both domestically and internationally, that's something that's gone a long way. And then to kind of see it all culminate on 1-4, there's a lot going on. It's all good things. It's all great. That one dude, Colton from Twitter, asked, it's definitely the less hot, or actually he was replying to Rambo and Slam Pig, and I liked what he said here. He said, it's definitely the less hot potato booking. I hope Bishamon continues to defend the belts on a regular basis, because that long hiatus of no defenses from FTR really took the steam out of the division, in my opinion. And, I got to tell you, I do think that there is something to that. I think that when FTR had the belts, they definitely took some of the forward momentum that the division had gained, and kind of iced it a little bit. That being said, it's hard to deny the influence FTR had on the division with the great matches that they had with the United Empire team of Cobb and Okan. Obviously, the match of the year the tag team match of the year that they had with Aussie Open, and then the match they had in the Tokyo Dome with Bishamon. And so it's like the peaks are really high, but the lulls in between were very low. But I am happy with what they're doing with Bishamon. A lot of people, myself included, thought TMDK were going to pick up the win here. And that would have fit very much in line with the traditional booking patterns that we've seen when it comes to these titles and when it comes to Bishamon in particular. But I like what they're doing. For a long time now, we've said on this show, and other, smart individuals when it comes to New Japan have said, like, oh, Bishamon are like the de facto top domestic team in Japan. But that's sort of more so just based on the fact that they've won tournaments and titles, but they've never been showcased as truly dominant. And in a very short succession, you look at it now, and they beat FTR, they beat Aussie Open, and now they've beaten TMDK, and they've won the World Tag League. It's hard to deny their status as one of the top teams kayfabe-wise. Beyond that, the actual matches they're having are fantastic, and it reminds me a lot of the renaissance that they had not last year, but the year prior, when they were the Never Six-Man Tag Team Champions with the Ishii. So, yeah, this Bishamon tag team, I mean, when you talk about the short list of top tag teams in the world, they have to be on that list now. And it's not just something funny that people say or whatever, or like a New Japan fanboyism. You hear the New Japan fans be like, well, what about Bishamon? Well, now it is kind of like, well, what about Bishamon? Because they fucking rule. Their matches are really great, and they need to be recognized for it. So let's move on to the semi-main event. We had the NJPW World Television title was defended. The champion, Zack Sabre Jr., along with Kosei Fujita, defeated the challenger, Tomohiro Ishii, 14 minutes and 38 seconds. He defeated Ishii with the Zack Driver, and this was a really, really, really close contest. This one definitely came down to the wire. And, these television title matches have a 15-minute time limit, and the title does not change hands on a draw, and they clarified that on the commentary here. So prior to this match, both of these guys had won 3 matches to one another, so they were dead even in their feud with each other. So this would be kind of the deciding match as to who goes up in their personal feud and rivalry. And all throughout the match, Zack Sabre Jr. is focusing on the left arm of Tomohiro Ishii, and Ishii, much to the surprise of Zack Sabre Jr., focused a lot on technical ground wrestling early on in the match, and really was tying Sabre up into knots on the mat. And it was kind of interesting because you saw both of these guys go for different tactics than you would have expected. Sabre kind of getting frustrated with the technical acumen of Ishii and his quote-unquote strong style. He himself decided to sort of devolve into Ishii style and sort of start implementing a lot of strikes, a lot of kicks and European uppercuts and headbutts and stuff like that. And then Ishii was doing a good job sort of mixing in the big shots, the big, his big strike offense along with his technical wrestling. But as the match went on, Sabre continued to work on Ishii's arm and started applying different cross-arm breakers and tying him up into pretzels. And Ishii kind of had to become an escape artist and kept getting to the ropes. And then at that point, Ishii starts attacking Sabre's arm. He started off by hitting a sliding clothesline on Zack Sabre's arm, and then they started trading forearms with each other. And then Ishii started unloading the headbutts and running shoulder tackles, and these guys were just laying into each other, not to mention all the different fast-paced reversals and shifts in momentum. This match was really, really fast-paced. Eventually, around the 10-minute mark, I noticed Tomohiro Ishii had blood coming out of his mouth, so very hard hitting. He ends up hitting a standing power bomb for a near fall on Zack Sabre. Sabre then turns it into a triangle choke off of the power bomb pin. Ishii reaches the ropes. Nice, really great series of moves there. Ishii ends up putting a mid-ring octopus hold / cobra stretch or cobra twist on Zack Sabre Jr. and Zack tries to power out of it, and then somehow it gets turned into a code like this, the biggest code red for Ishii. Ishii almost pins him 1, 2, 3. At this point, Sabre realizes that striking and trying to submit Tomohiro Ishii is not going to win, and he starts spamming very complex pinfall combinations. He goes for an O'Connor roll for a near fall, and at this point, Ishii starts just hitting him with big offense, hits a German suplex for near fall at 12 minutes. When they made the time announcement at this point, the crowd started reacting, being made aware that there's only 3 minutes left in the match. Ishii hits a hard clothesline for near fall. Sabre got a roll up for close near fall as well. Sabre goes for a dragon suplex with the bridge, gets the 1-2. Ishii hits an enziguri. Sabre ended up hitting a punk kick to the chest of Ishii. Ishii hit another enziguri, and they're both down at 14 minutes, and the fans are starting to react huge to the 1 minute warning. And then at this point, Sabre ends up through a series of different reversals out of nowhere, getting the Zack driver, the sit down pile driver, the 1-2-3. And this match was just great. They really teased that they were going to go very close to the, time limit draw here. And Sabre was phenomenal here, as was Tomohiro Ishii. 14 minutes and 38 seconds, Zack driver. We have some questions here. Strong Style Demon said, why is Ishii a golden god of wrestling? Is there some kind of backstory to how he became the least awarded best wrestler in the world? This is a general question, but to be topical, we can link it to the latest match against ZSJ. Holy shit, what a wonderful match that was. And I concur, holy shit, that was indeed an incredible match. I think it got a lot of love on Cage Match as well, just kind of taking a look here. That Bishamon tag team match sitting at 7.20. This one with the World Television title match has an 8.46. So very, very good. I think about 4.25 is probably just about right. And this was fantastic. As far as Ishii being the least awarded greatest wrestler alive, I think a lot of it just has to do with his positioning. It's hard to be recognized as the greatest wrestler of a year or of an era when other guys that are also as good as you, like Kota Ibushi and Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega, Kazuchika Okada, all are competing in the same era. Not to mention, he's also always slotted as anywhere from low to upper mid-carder. So that probably has a lot to do with it. And, at this point with Ishii's age and his outsider status, it's not really a situation where New Japan's going to invest in him to be like a top guy, when they have other similar younger models like, say, Shingo. But yes, he's undoubtedly one of the greatest wrestlers I've ever seen perform or wrestle. Just out of this world. That takes us to the main event for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title. Hiromu Takahashi, the champion, defended and defeated his challenger Yo. 29 minutes and 42 seconds. He hit the Time Bomb 2. And again, just incredible. And I think that this match was the best match of the night for night 2. And it's so good. I think it actually gave Ospreay and Taichi a run for its money. And if you told me that you thought this was as good or even better, I wouldn't argue with you one iota. That's how good this was. Hiromu and Yo, leading into this match, they'd had 6 prior engagements. I think the best match they'd had was that Best of the Super Junior final that was sort of interrupted by a recently turned heel show. But I've never loved any of the matches that these guys have had against one another prior to this. And they went out there and they had a big task in front of them. I mean, Hiromu has been lobbying for a long time for juniors to headline these big shows with the junior title, and it doesn't happen that often. And in the past, there have been times where they've given him the opportunity to do this, and it kind of flopped. But this was not that at all. I mean, first things first, they outdrew the first night with Naito and Umino on top, which is a huge feather in the cap of Hiromu and Yo. And then the other thing, too, is this match was just blow away fantastic. They started the match, with a very intense lockup at the very beginning, very slow pace in the beginning, but then they started brawling to the floor, and from there, Hiromu was just very vicious. He threw Yo into the guardrails time and time again. I liked some of the bumping that Yo did on the outside there. Hiromu hits a sliding drop kick for a near fall at 3 3 minutes and 30 seconds. And then they brawled back to the floor. Yo got whipped into the guardrail again, and then Hiromu hits a snap suplex on the cement where they have the thin mat, like it's just the carpet leading up the entrance ramp at 5 minutes and 30 seconds. And Yo almost doesn't get in the ring. He gets into the ring just to break up the count out at 19, so one more second and he would have lost. And then from there, they go into a vicious chop exchange, and this is where things really started to heat up. These guys were just lighting each other up with huge chops. Hiromu hits a drop kick. They both go down at 8 minutes and 30 seconds. Yo hits a flip dive to the floor. They go back in the ring. Yo hits a missile drop kick. Yo hits Falcon Arrow. They're both doubled down. Then they get up and then they start trading forearm shots for an entire minute. They start trading drop kicks. There was a huge drop kick / knee that Yo landed on Hiromu that was just incredible. And afterwards, Hiromu grabbed his left leg in pain. And Yo starts working on the leg from that point. He does dragon screw leg whip, twisted the leg into the mat. And I know what you're probably thinking. I know, another body part match, but there's body part matches and then there's fantastic body part matches where it makes all the sense in the world and it's believable and it's very, very good. And that's what this was here. Yo ends up hitting a superplex, going back to a leg lock, trying to get the submission. He applies the figure 4 leg lock at 16 minutes and 30 seconds. There's a couple times where Hiromu was playing fast and loose with the tap out rule here. He was doing that Brazilian tap. You tap one time and maybe the guy will let go. And even Red Shoes was like, are you tapping or nah? But they get to their feet. Hiromu hits a huge headbutt. We start getting German suplexes and clotheslines and everything like that. 19 minutes and 30 seconds, both guys are down. Hiromu ends up hitting a huge Death Valley driver into the turnbuckles. Yo hits a giant clothesline. And then from there, they start... Yo attacked the damaged knee of Hiromu again. Yo ends up hitting a Poison Rana about 24 minutes into the match. And then a huge super kick for a believable near fall. From there, he hits a Ushigoroshi, dragon suplex with a high bridge, trying to get him out of here. Hiromu's just not, willing to lay down. And then Hiromu hits the time bomb to really swing the momentum, gets the near fall, and both guys are down. They get up. Yo tries to go for the direct drive. Hiromu escapes. Hiromu hits a stunner, and then a butterfly pile driver for, this butterfly pile driver, I don't even know if that's the right name for it. It's almost like a J driller, but inverse. I've seen him do it a handful of times in the past, but it's been a while, 28 minutes in, and this thing is really, really cooking. Both guys are going for elaborate near falls. Yo tries to go for O'Connor roll. Hiromu tries to go for the Hiromu pin. Neither of those two things work. Hiromu hits a super kick and a clothesline, and then the time bomb 2 for the 1, 2, 3 in an incredible, incredible match. Just incredible. In fact, I'll go as far as to say I think this is one of the best junior title matches I've seen in New Japan in years. I think it's probably most likely better than almost every Desperado and Ishimori title match over the past couple years. And it really went to show you that Yo has the goods. Even though he hasn't always put it together, in this match, he really put it together and it was incredible. And Hiromu is still Hiromu. Even if he's not the guy that can do the death-defying crazy stuff, flying to the outside and risking his neck and his body night in and night out, he can go out there and have a hell of a war. And when I was watching this match, the thing that kept popping into my mind was the idea that this was really high stakes and high level human chess. It reminded me of like the same kind of philosophy behind like an MMA match, because these guys were trying everything in their power to get rid of the guy in front of them, and neither of them was willing to go away for the longest time. And yeah, this had a lot of heat, a lot of passion. If you haven't seen it, you got to go out of your way to see it. There were great matches on both evenings, but this was the match of the night on night 2 for sure. Post-match, Hiromu's lying on his back. He gets on the mic. He commends Yo for the match that they just had. He said that he didn't know that Yo had that in him. He thanks the crowd for coming out. And even though it wasn't a 100% sellout and he feels a lot of pressure as champion, it's his job to fire up the crowd and to get people to come out. He mentioned that Shingo has to complete the hat trick for LIJ by winning the title next week from Okada. And after he left the ring, he walked up to Desperado, who was on commentary, and waved the title in front of him, taunted him with the belt. And he made mention on the commentary that this was his goal, that, you know, juniors could headline big shows and draw, and he's got to live up to that expectation as the champion since he asked for it. So great closer. Much better main event than the night prior. Did have a question here from Guide to actually a couple wrestlings. A couple questions. Pumping Vama said, is Yo still a hoe? In addition, okay 890 said, is Yo still a hoe? But seriously, Yo impressed me a lot. What did you think would be next for Yo now with his resurgence? And I've always said this. Yo and Sho are two guys that I think should be leading the company and have not thus far. But if Yo can continue to go out there and have matches like this, he will no longer be on the hoe status. He will be top star, top contender status, maybe even future champion. So I was very impressed. I love this match. I'm probably 4.5 on it. Guide to Wrestling said favorite match of the two nights and best match of each show. And it's kind of the same question, but my favorite match was also the best match both nights, and that would be Taichi versus Ospreay on night 1 and Yo versus Hiromu on night 2. So, with that being said, let's jump into the preview for New Beginning in Osaka next week on February the 11th, Osaka Prefectural Gym in the Edion Arena, Osaka, and this show is sold out. Now, I don't believe it's a full capacity sellout. I think it's, based on what I've looked into, it's probably like a 2/3 full sellout, but that is still quite an accomplishment and something that New Japan should be very proud of. Going down this preview, and I'll be very brief, Oscar Luebe and Toriano are taking on the United Empire team of Aaron Hanara and Great-O-Khan. Second match of the night, Ryuzuki Taguchi, Shoto Umino, Tiger Mask, and Tomoaki Hanma will be taking on the LIJ team of Bushi, Hiromu, Sanada, and Tetsuya Naito. Special singles match, we have Taiji Ishimori and Master Wato facing off against one another. Fourth match of the night, Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Kenta. Fifth match of the night, Never Openweight 6-man tag team titles are officially on the line as Desperado, Suzuki, and Ren Narita challenge the House of Torture team of Evil, Sho, and Yujiro Takahashi. Sixth match of the night, loser leaves Japan match. We have Jay White versus Hikuleo. Seventh match of the night, the Never Openweight title is on the line as Tamatonga defends against ELP, El Phantasmo. And then the main event, the IWGP World Heavyweight title is on the line as Kazuchika Okada, the champion, defends against his challenger and former champion, Shingo Takagi. And I'm just going to go over the major matches here. So, unlike the other major shows on the New Beginning tour, this is the biggest of the nights and has the most stacked lineup. And we only really have two preview or two undercard level matches to start the night off. The third match of the night, we have Ishimori versus Master Wato. And Wato came very close to pinning Ishimori in the most recent match that they had on Sunday, where he hit that I don't know what you want to call it, but it's like a crucifix bomb pin. It's the same maneuver that he beat Ishimori with late last year in that mixed tag team match they had against one another. And Wato's kind of the guy that's on the rise with his trajectory ever since he pinned Ishimori in that match, and ever since they kind of made him the highlighted star during the the four-way man match for the IWGP Junior title at Wrestle Kingdom, where he came up just a little bit short. And Ishimori is a big test for him. And we've seen him in big tests in the past, singles matches against guys like Robbie Eagles, things like that. But I think the time is now for them to invest and give Wato a solidifying finishing win here. So I think he needs this a little bit more than Ishimori does. I'll be a little bit surprised if even though Ishimori normally would be your betting favorite, I just think Wato has more momentum and upside. So I'm going to say they go with Wato here. After that, you got Tanahashi versus Kenta, and these guys, this is like the feud that will never end. Two generational talents who, were at the top of the wrestling world in competing companies at the same time a decade ago. And ever since Kenta's come over to New Japan, these guys have just been at each other's throats and had numerous matches, some great, some not so great, some very violent. That match at Wrestle Kingdom put Kenta on the shelf for quite a while, and I think Kenta as a character hasn't forgotten that. Tanahashi lately has seemed to be less than himself, and I've been saying that for a while, but it's becoming even more so apparent. You could always go that way, and I don't think either guy necessarily needs the win, because I don't see the company necessarily going with either man as a top-end star anytime in the near future. But with that being said, Kenta is getting ready to gear up for a strong openweight title shot against Fred Rosser in North America at Battle in the Valley on February 18th. And so with that being the case, he probably needs to win a little bit more than Tanahashi does. So I would say expect to see Kenta defeat Tanahashi via possible nefarious means. He might even just hit him with the go to sleep and pick up the 1-2-3. When it comes to the Never Openweight 6-man tag team titles, they may potentially have Despy, Suzuki, and Narita win these belts. They've had stranger trios than them do it in the past. And House of Torture they've been holding these titles for quite a while. Even when they dropped them briefly, they got them right back. They haven't defended a lot. They haven't done much with them. So it might be a good idea to get gold on Ren Narita for the first time and kind of give Desperado and Suzuki something to do while they're not embroiled with the top-end acts of their respective divisions. But I think there might potentially be money in a Suzuki-Narita feud. They teased so much dissension between these guys leading up to this match. I wouldn't be surprised if they lose and then there's a falling out afterwards. Of course, you could go the opposite way if that's where they're trying to go and have them win the titles and then do the eventual breakup and split later on. But I'm going to say House of Torture retains here. That's just my feeling. I could be wrong here. Next match, that loser leaves town match with Jay White and Hikuleo. I don't know what that means. I don't know what is going on with this. The idea, essentially, this stems from the old territory days. Loser leaves town, which usually means loser leaves the territory. And if one of these two guys leaves and they have to stick to that, stipulation, then they're out of Japan. But does that mean they're out of New Japan as a whole? Does that mean they can't work for, say, Tamashii or New Japan Strong in some respect? Or does this mean we're writing them off and they're leaving to become a free agent or go work for WWE or AEW or some other company? It's really hard to say. And then when you had competing stories come out in quick succession saying that, Jay White's leaving and he's going to WWE, and then same thing with Hikuleo and Tama Tonga, it makes it very difficult to ascertain what really is going on. We do know Jay White has other dates with New Japan after this for Battle in the Valley, but if he lost here, that could be a send-off. And of course, like I mentioned, this might all just be an in-promotion storyline where one of these two guys leaves Japan for some period of time and then is brought back under some sort of, other stipulation in the future. They might just go to America for a while. I don't know. Mauro Kenta did ask, what would be the bigger loss, Jay White in the main event scene or Milano's hysterical laughter during Hikuleo's matches? And, I don't watch too much of the Japanese commentary, so I'm not familiar with Milano's laughter during Hikuleo's matches, so I might need to tune in and check that out. But, that is kind of the big catch-22. You're either losing a guy that's already at the top of the main event scene and one of your biggest players, or you're losing someone that is slotted to be potentially one of the biggest players in the company and a main event superstar in Hikuleo. I'm going to just say I think Hikuleo is leaving and Jay White is staying. And I've been back and forth on this, and I don't feel firm on it, and my mind might change 5 minutes from now, but that's just what I'm saying now. Jay White wins, and Hikuleo leaves. 7th match of the night. But I will say I am excited for that match. I think even though I didn't love the work they did in America against one another, the work they've done in the preview tags has been really great. So, never openweight title match, Tama Tonga versus El Phantasmo. And my feeling is if Hikuleo's leaving and the story is that there's interest in him and Tama Tonga, now might be the time, like one Cody Rhodes, where they read the tea leaves and they say it's time to leave the territory. Maybe this is the highest Tama Tonga can go in the company. And him and, G.O.D., they spread their wings and they leave and go for, the different pastures. They go to New York, and maybe this is the time that ELP ascends the ranks. We already know that he is, making this transition from junior to heavyweight. So it might be his time. There is another way of thinking about it too. I think ELP winning is probably the right way to go. I know Tama Tonga just regained the title, and I guess. I don't know. I'm kind of analyzing this all on the air with you guys live. If Jay White is the one that loses, for sure, then I think there might be a case that ELP should win here, or ELP should oust Jay and be established as the leader of Bullet Club going into this match, and thereby reigniting his feud with G.O.D., Tama Tonga, the Bull Club, ELP, all that sort of stuff. So maybe that would be a good idea. Then again, if Tama Tonga were to win and he's staying and he beats this new leader of the Bull Club and El Phantasmo, that might give ELP and them something to chase after a little bit. So a few different ways you could go with it. But if Tama's losing, ELP should definitely, or if Hikuleo and Tama Tonga are leaving, then ELP should 100% win here. But I'm going to lean more towards ELP picking up the win here to kind of send him down that Will Ospreay track of things. And then finally, the main event, you have Kazuchika Okada versus Shingo Takagi, which I believe is most likely the reason that this show sold out, in addition to numerous other things. Big feather in the cap to both of those guys, especially Shingo Takagi, showing that he is a draw at the top of the card. And these guys, all their matches against one another have been, fantastic, top to bottom. People love them. They rave about them. And I think this will be another one of those, another one for the record books for them. But there's no way Okada's losing this title, in my opinion. He's getting ready to gear up for a match with Kaito Kiyomiya, and I think he needs to go into that match as the champion. As well, Shingo Takagi is the current reigning KOPW champion, so I just don't think it's feasible that he beats Okada here. Dom Homie 101 did ask, how high are the odds of Okada losing his IWGP Heavyweight Championship before his big match against Kaito Kiyomiya? And I think they're relatively low. So that is going to do it. Next week, Jeremy Donovan will be back here on the show. We will be reviewing New Beginning in Osaka, and I'm very much looking forward to that show. It looks great top to bottom. Now, if you don't want spoilers, you may want to skip forward a few minutes because on February 3rd and February 4th, we had events from Tamashii 3 and Tamashii 4 from Australia. So I'm going to read over those results. We don't have a lot to discuss here because these haven't made tape yet, but I wanted to make mention of it just so that it's noted that this is kind of happening in the same, wrestling spectrum of New Japan. So New Japan Tamashii 3, February 3rd, taking place from Selena's Entertainment Centre in Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. We had 8 matches. Jessica Troy, she defeated Charlie Evans, 5 minutes and 47 seconds. The Velocities defeated Jordan Allen Wright and Nikolai Anton Bell, 10 minutes and 41 seconds. Carter Dreams defeated Jake Taylor, 9 minutes and 58 seconds. Four Nations, the team of Adam Hoffman and Mick Moretti, defeated Richard Mulu and Victor Langas, 11 minutes and 26 seconds. The United Empire team of Aaron Hanari and Kyle Fletcher defeated the Rogue Army, Bad Luck Fale and Jack Bonza by DQ, 12 minutes and 43 seconds. Libert Lucci, who is, I believe, a new entrant into the Bullet Club. He was invited by Jack Bonza and Bad Luck Fale. And, I really have to wonder how kayfabe and true these Bullet Club members from, Oceania really are when they're invited by Bad Luck Fale, because me and Jeremy Donovan had a huge debate about this for the longest time when it came to Gino Gambino. But Liber Lucci, OG Bullet Club, defeats Andrew Villalobos, 13 minutes and 2 seconds. Ricky South defeated Michael Richards in the semi-main event, 13 minutes and 12 seconds. And then in the main event, Robbie Eagles defeated Aaron Solo, 14 minutes and 23 seconds. The next night, February 4th, from Croxtonin, from the Croxtonin in Melbourne, Australia, we had Tamashii Night 4. First match of the night, Gore and Jake Andrew Watha defeated Nikolai Anton Bell and Shep Alexander. Second match of the night, Richard Mulu defeated Jarvis. Third match of the night, Rogue Army Tag Team defeated Andrew Villalobos and Michael Richards. Fourth match of the night, the Natural Classics, that's Stevie Philippe and Tome Philippe, defeated Jake Taylor and Jordan Allen Wright. Fifth match of the night, Mitch Waterman defeated Libert Lucci by DQ. Sixth match of the night, Aaron Solo defeated Slex. Semi-main event, and what I'm hearing is being called a match of the year contender. We don't have tape on it, but a lot of reputable and knowledgeable fans who were there live are saying that this is outstanding, blow away, like blow your mind good. So I hope it lives up to the reputation. But the United Empire and Aussie Open's Kyle Fletcher defeated Robbie Eagles in singles action. Huge win there. And then in the main event, Caveman Ugg defeated the United Empire's Aaron Hanari. Kind of a surprising result there in the main event. So let's move on to the news. We got some news stories here. Kota Ibushi has officially left New Japan Pro Wrestling. We made that mention that he was a free agent last week on the show. New Japan put out their official statement saying with the conclusion of his contract period on January 31st, 2023, Kota Ibushi has departed New Japan Pro Wrestling. Ibushi has been recovering from injury since October 2021. We apologize to Ibushi, his fans, for the abrupt announcement and join them in wishing Ibushi the very best in all his future endeavors. So as we made mention last week, there are some new dates for Ibushi here in the States, but one of the more interesting talking points, and I'm sure we're not going to talk about Kota Ibushi much more moving forward, but I thought that this was worth mentioning. There's talks of, actually the discussions are underway right now, that Rizin, which is an MMA promotion, it's like the spiritual successor to Pride, that they have made an offer for Kota Ibushi to come work for them and potentially do shoot fighting. And then I think they're also potentially trying to make their way into professional wrestling as well. And they want him to have a boxing match with Manny Pacquiao. Yes, that Manny Pacquiao in Rizin. And Rizin has also in the past had Floyd Mayweather come over and do a couple boxing matches for them in the past. So that there is precedent there that this could actually happen. Dom Homie 101 said, thoughts on the rumors of a possible fight between Manny Pac-Man Pacquiao and Kota, the Golden Star Ibushi. And I got to tell you guys, I know Ibushi is one of the greatest wrestlers that's ever lived. And I know he's got a combat sport background. I know he was a K2 level karate practitioner in his younger years, but I saw this man training mitts not that long ago, and he was making horrible mistakes. Throwing the jab, bringing it down by his chest. Throwing the hook, bringing it down by his chest. No head movement, no blocking. He just did not look like a guy that knew how to actually strike on that level, which would kind of make sense because he's a karate guy. And I say that as respectfully as possible, but he does, it's a different game than boxing. And Manny Pacquiao is one of the greatest boxers that has ever lived. Manny Pacquiao would fucking destroy Kota Ibushi in a very, very short period of time. Doesn't matter about the size difference. He would fuck up Kota Ibushi. I did see Kota Ibushi make comment on this, and he did confirm the talks, and his whole thing was that not very many people would ever get the opportunity to fight a legend like Manny Pacquiao, and he would see it as an honor. So take that for what it's worth. In other news, Tokyo Sports did an interview with Tetsuya Naito, and there was a rumor going around. We didn't discuss it on this show, but there was a rumor that was spreading through the internet that Tetsuya Naito was being confirmed as a full-fledged freelancer as of very recently, and he was no longer signed to New Japan Pro Wrestling. We didn't even talk about it on the show because it was such a ludicrous assertion, and we knew for a fact that he was 100% signed to New Japan. But during this Tokyo Sports interview, he debunked that notion. He is officially signed with New Japan, and in fact, he just re-upped his contract with them and got a modest raise as well. So, everyone who thought he was a freelancer just because his picture posted up as someone in Noah, they do that for everybody that works for their company, whether they're part of the company or not. So, that was kind of crazy. They've made the official announcement that Kenta and Fred Rosser will be fighting on February 18th at Battle in the Valley, as I mentioned earlier. For the NJPW Strong Openweight title. If Rosser wins, he will be at 8 defenses, and he will have passed Tom Lawler for having the all-time defense record for that title. So I think Kenta's going to win, but we will see. Additionally, Zack Sabre Jr. post-match issued an open challenge for his TV title at Battle in the Valley. He made mention of the idea that people online and different wrestlers were complaining that this title is supposed to be a youth title, and he's only defended it just now against Ishii, who's in his 40s. So he put out an open challenge for some of those young blokes from the LA dojo. So don't be surprised if Alex Coughlin or Gabe Kidd end up fighting Zack Sabre Jr. for the TV title at Battle in the Valley, which sounds awesome. In other news, the Bullet Club's team from Impact, Ace Austin and Chris Bay, they had a rematch from Super Junior Tag League against Kushida and Kevin Knight on Impact this past week, and they defeated Kushida and Kevin Knight for a second time. And I believe that is available on New Japan World, or if it's not, it will be made shortly. Kevin Kelly and Chris Charlton have been in the studio recording numerous matches from Muto's career for his retirement, and those are expected to be made available on New Japan World very shortly. So if you want to take a look at retrospective on Kiichi Muto's career from his early inception as a young lion until his last years in the company, they'll be making that available in English shortly. The All-Star Junior Festival on March 1st, 2023, we have learned that on February 25th, the full card is going to be made available. They have, as of now, already listed 11 different competitors that will be taking place for that event. So far, we have listed Hiromu Takahashi, El Desperado, and Taiji Ishimori from New Japan Pro Wrestling. Additionally, Amakusa from Noah, Dragon Kid from Dragon Gate, Atsuki Aoyagi from All Japan Pro Wrestling, Musashi from Michinoku Pro, Yuki Ueno from DDT, Billy Ken Kid from Osaka Pro, El Lindemann from GLATE, and Volador Jr. from CMLL have all been made and confirmed as participants in the All-Star Junior Festival, which sounds awesome. And then earlier today, Fantastica Mania, they put out the press release that it's back on the New Japan calendar, 6 events across a 1-week period from February 22nd till the 28th, live on New Japan World. The full cards are now available. I'm not going to go over the full cards, but a couple things that were made mention that are highlighted here. February 22nd, there will be a Relevos Increíbles. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly or not. But there will be that type of match action. And what that is, that's a tag team battle where rivals are forced to become partners. So they made mention that Ultimo Guerrero and Atlantis Jr. will be taking on the team of Hiroshi Tanahashi and Mystico on that evening. The next night, there will also be another mixed match tag team match as Volador Jr. and Mystico take on the team of Atlantis Jr. and Templario. As well, there will be mixed match as Show from House of Torture teams up with Hechicero and Magia Blanca to take on Hiroshi Tanahashi, Desperado, and Ultimo Guerrero. February 24th and 26th, there's going to be a 2-night tag team tournament. 4 factions will be represented as Los Depredados, the Predators, that's Volador Jr. and Magia Blanca. They will be taking on the mixed match team of Ultimo Guerrero and Atlantis Jr., who will be waving the flag of Los Guerreros Increíbles de Atlantida. Additionally, Rey Cometa and Dolce Gardenia will be taking from the team of Los Dolces Atrosueños, that's the Sweet Dream the Sweet Dream Catchers, will be taking on the LIJ de Japón team of Titan and Bushi. So those first 2 matches will take place on the 24th, and then the finals will take place on the 26th. On February 27th, the CMLL World Welterweight Championship title will be on the line as Titan defends his belt against Soberano Jr. Titan is nearing a 1,200-day-long title reign. His title reign is the longest in the 31-year history of that title. On that same evening, Volador Jr. will be taking on Templario in singles action. And then the main event of the final night in Corkin Hall, we'll be seeing legend Mystico take on up-and-coming young rising star Atlantis Jr. in the main event. Last couple of bits of news before we take some questions. Francesco Akira and Andrew Everett have been advertised for a match on March 4th, 2023 from a company called Zaj Grandeur. That was made known on Twitter today. February 23rd, CMLL's Torneo Increíble. That will be another tournament of mixed match stars, and I believe from what I can see on the poster, it looks like Rocky Romero and Volador Jr., who are currently feuding, are going to be teamed together during that tournament. So that should be very, very interesting. Rocky also defended the CMLL Historic World Welterweight title versus Yuya Uemura on the Jericho Cruise and was successful in defending that title just this week. And then finally, Chris Bay and Ace Austin won the Wrestling Revolver Tag Team titles on February 2nd, 2023. So let's jump into some questions and then talk about recommended match of the week, and we'll get out of here. So couple quick questions. OK890 asked, would you be opposed to Taichi winning the New Japan Cup, and do you think it's likely? And I got to tell you, I prefer for somebody to win the New Japan Cup in a situation where it's likely that they could or would win the heavyweight title when they challenge for it. And I'm pretty sure most individuals would agree with me that if Taichi wins this tournament, he has little to no shot at actually winning the world title. That being said, there might not be a better way to elevate a man of Taichi's status than having him win the New Japan Cup. It would be bold and daring and kind of a new direction creatively, something that they haven't done recently when it comes to the New Japan Cup in the last couple of years. I'd be all for it. I wouldn't be opposed to it at all. I don't think he has a realistic chance of beating Okada at this current time, but that might be the next stepping stone for a guy like him. He really had an incredible accounting of himself in that match with Ospreay, and for anyone that saw that and think it's just an Ospreay carry job, I think you're potentially missing the point here. Taichi is someone who I think could be a top act in New Japan domestically. He's got a lot going for him, and I think a New Japan Cup win would be a great thing for him. Next question he asked, Okan and Ospreay have expressed wanting a Joshi United Empire member. How would that work? Would they still be part of Stardom faction because of how faction-based Stardom is? And I got to tell you, I really have no clue I'm not the biggest expert when it comes to Joshi or Stardom for that matter. And I've seen people kind of postulate similar situations and what would happen if someone was part of a faction in New Japan, like a men's faction, but, and all that sort of thing. And I just don't know the answer. I think it's highly unlikely, but if they are pushing for it, maybe it could happen. I don't know. But, the United Empire did have a female member in the past in Brie Priestley, and she got Oz cuttered out of the group. So if I was a Joshi, I might think twice about wanting to join up with those guys. Emerald Burning Hammer asked, why Nuge not putting the IWGP title on Taichi this year is a crime. Hey, he might have something there. If you did hypothetically want to elevate Taichi to that level, now might be the time. He's not a spring chicken. He's probably working at the highest level that he ever has before. And if you wanted to go that way, you absolutely could. I don't know that I would classify it as a crime. When we live in a world where Tomohiro Ishii is probably never going to win the title, but it is what it is. So Joe Mama 9719 said, so I was watching this weekend show and I came across something I'm not sure of that maybe you can provide some clarification on. In regards to the new faction that consists of Taichi, Kanemaru, Doki, and Taka, how many guys are there after all? Sorry, I misspelled my glasses. I didn't see your misspelling, so all apologies there, but there are just 4 guys in the faction named just 4 guys. I know it gets a little confusing, but there happens to just be 4 of them for now. Dom Homie 101 said, it's been a minute, but I'm back, and he's got a lot of questions. So he said, thoughts on the end of the clap crowd. What would some things that would be remembered from this era? What are the top matches from the clap crowd era? And, it's kind of a whirlwind. I don't quite classify my New Japan wrestling experience the same way other people do. I know a lot of people are there's before the clap crowd and then afterwards and yada yada. And for me, it just kind of all blends into one another, especially for how long it persisted. But I think some of the things that people are going to remember during the clap crowd era is probably Naito's failed title run, House of Torture and the elevation of Evil and how much of a blunder that was. The rise of Desperado as a top act in the junior division. The rise of Will Ospreay. The rise of Shingo Takagi. The rise and fall of Kota Ibushi. A lot of things. I mean, those are sort of the things I kind of look to. I mean, as far as the clap crowd, the idioms of that sort of whole thing with empty audiences, and then there was where they had the weird sound makers and the stuff like that. I don't know. Clap crowd and COVID gave us KOPW. We also had some of the best matches of all time between Shingo and Will Ospreay. Those kind of stand out to me. I think some of the matches between Hiromu and Desperado stand out. We saw the rise of Tama Tonga as a singles act. That was something that has to kind of be applauded and remembered. Jay White was in America for a very, very long time, and that's another thing. I don't know what's going to happen with that, depending. I'd like to kind of put the clap crowd, whole thing behind me. I don't want to remember too much of it and just kind of move on because shit's getting hot. So he said, thoughts on the Junior All-Star show maybe leading to a Super J Cup tournament in 2024 to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the first Super J Cup. I love that idea, and I hope that happens. And I would love for this All-Star show to lead to more cooperation and more stories and more interaction between juniors from across different companies. Definitely. He said, is it too late for Hiromu to have a run at heavyweight? And that's an interesting question. I don't know if I agree with that, but I've always said that I think Hiromu might not have the right frame for what they look for, meaning New Japan management, for him to be a heavyweight. And we are, even though I know like we're getting to the point where it's like, okay, he's done pretty much everything there is to do there. I think he's doing a lot right now to kind of spearhead and like forge a new path for juniors, which is commendable. And at the same time, the talent at heavyweight is passing him by. Not to say he couldn't hang with those guys, but we've seen the rise of so many top heavyweight talents over the past 3 or 4 years, and there's more on the horizon. I'm just wondering if Hiromu could even, they probably would treat him like Jushin Liger when Jushin Liger went heavyweight, which was like, he has great matches, but he's not, and he might get a title shot here or there, but he's not going to be treated as a top guy, and he lost a lot. That's what happened to Liger, and I think that's probably what would happen to Hiromu. I would much rather prefer him just be the Liger of this generation, personally. He also asked, what is up with all this Okada hate? In my Birdman voice, put some respect on Okada's name. This man is the GOAT. He's not even 35 years old yet. He put on classic after classic matches against the likes of Hiroshi Tanahashi, AJ Styles, Shinsuke Nakamura, Kenny Omega, Tetsuya Naito, Will Ospreay, Kota Ibushi, Katsuyori Shibata, plus many more names. And I have to agree with you. I don't know if there is Okada hate. I would say expel that hate from your heart, because it's going to be sad when this man's gone, and he is one of the greatest talents that has ever lived. He said, now it's time for some fight talk. With rumors of Francis Ngannou looking to enter the boxing world, who would the ideal opponent be between Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, and Deontay the Bronze Bomber Wilder? In my opinion, the best option would be Deontay Wilder, due to the fact that the fight could be sold as the battle of the heavy hitters. And there is something to that. Deontay Wilder is probably the scariest knockout artist of this generation, the scariest definitely since Mike Tyson. And I would say, based on what I've seen, he reminds me of like a heavyweight version of like Tommy Hearns. He may be the hardest hitter since Ernie Shavers. Likewise, Francis Ngannou is the scariest MMA striker I've ever seen in my life. And so you're taking, in this generation and maybe all time, the two biggest strikers from those two respective sports and putting them in a boxing match, and they both have knockout dynamite power in both hands. That's an incredible selling point. But the reality is Francis Ngannou has no shot unless he just catches, luckily, one of these three guys. So I would say the perfect opponent would be whichever one earns him the most amount of money, because the rose will be off the bloom, or the bloom will be off the rose, or whatever that saying is, after that one fight. So hopefully he cashes out with his one big fight. I would probably say with Tyson Fury, they'd probably sell the most tickets. They probably do the biggest business. And Tyson Fury probably take care of him the most and actually do business and carry him the same way that Floyd Mayweather carried rapist Conor McGregor in the past. So that would probably be his best bet. Thoughts on the upcoming biopic film of the life of Big George Foreman? Thoughts on the boxing career of Foreman? What would be your favorite Foreman fight? What's his legacy? Where does he rank among the top heavyweights of all time? And who would have won in a fight between George Foreman and Larry Holmes? And man, a lot of great questions here. I definitely want to see that movie. I don't know how good it will be, but I want to check it out. As far as the boxing career of Foreman, I mean, he's one of the most inspirational fighters of all time. Someone that, rose up as a juggernaut, won the world title, dropped it to Ali, was out of the sport shortly after that, was gone for nearly a decade, returned as an older man, as a joke, who was overweight, no one took seriously, and slowly but surely rose up the ranks and did the improbable and became the oldest heavyweight champion in history by knocking out Michael Moore. I love his story. I think his legacy is that of being one of the greatest heavyweight fighters of all time, old or young. I think he's easily amongst the top 10 fighters of all time. I don't have my official rankings in front of me, but I mean, I usually end up ranking George Foreman around the probably sixth best heavyweight of all time. I do have to tell you though, my favorite fight has got to be the fight with Ron Lyle. That's one of the greatest heavyweight knockdown drag out fights ever. If you've never seen it, we're talking like a 6-star boxing match. These guys both hit the canvas multiple times. Knockout, drag out, brawl. It's incredible. It's one of the scariest heavyweight fights of all time. But I do favor Larry Holmes over George Foreman, and I have Larry Holmes ranked higher than George Foreman. Stylistically, I think Larry Holmes had the answer for a guy like George, just personally. That's my opinion. Maru Kenta asked, Ryzen has shown interest in Ibushi and has thrown his name around as Pacquiao's first victim. Even with the weight advantage, how badly would he be destroyed by Pacquiao? Do you think Mayweather-Pacquiao 2 will happen as an exhibition in Japan? And I don't know about that, although that might be fun and be interesting. As far as the exhibition question goes, I hadn't heard anything about that, but, I'm sure those guys probably are up to making, they're both down to make, tens of millions of dollars against each other, probably close to like 50 million each. And it's like I said earlier, I think Pacquiao would just utterly obliterate Ibushi. He has no business being in the ring with Pacquiao, and he would get just destroyed. And then the final question here, with Fedor retiring this past weekend, what's your favorite Fedor moment and or fight? And Fedor is easily one of my favorite fighters that has ever lived. I think he is undoubtedly the greatest MMA fighter of all time. I definitely think there's discussions to be had for guys like John Jones, Anderson Silva, George St. Pierre, Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. And if you told me that you thought differently, I'd hear that out, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you because I think that they're on the short list, and I think so is Fedor. But, Fedor Emelianenko has had the longest run of any number one pound-for-pound fighter in the world in history. He sat atop the pound-for-pound rankings from 2003 till 2010 for 7 years straight. Nobody, including John Jones, has ever done that. He also was the most prolific heavyweight of his era. He went virtually undefeated for literally a decade, from 2000 till 2010. He fought more combat sport world champions in MMA than any other fight, and defeated them as well than any other fighter in history. By my tally, he defeated upwards of over 20 world champions across numerous disciplines. This is including Olympic level wrestlers, Division I level wrestlers, Olympic, and we're talking gold medalists too, and Olympians, world champion judo players, world champion BJJ players, world champion MMA fighters, world champion kickboxers, world champion sambo fighters, world champion Vale Tudo fighters. Like, you name the discipline, and this guy beat them all. And that also includes world champions from every single major company in the world at that time, including 7 former UFC heavyweight champions that he defeated in his time. Fedor is somebody that was not only undefeated for a decade, but he rarely ever lost a round. I can think of 3 moments in his entire prime that he was ever even troubled or had issues with an opponent. He didn't look like much. If you've ever seen this guy, he kind of looks like a bald Mario, like a plumber, plump, round, rotund dude that probably has no business fighting. And then he would go in there with this aura of invincibility and just fucking smash and demolish anyone that was in front of him. Nobody stood a chance. He has, I believe, 16 knockouts, 15 submissions. This was someone who was stupendous in every single aspect of MMA. Most of the GOATs that you talk about, they were really great in several disciplines, several areas of the game, but they had a glaring hole. But that's not how it was with Fedor. He was literally great at grappling. He was great off his back. He was great on top. He had dynamite in both hands. He could knock you out standing. In the clinch, he could fuck you up. He could sub you from any position. There's literally nowhere that this guy wasn't dominant and he wasn't a top fighter, and he mixed in those skills with beautiful precision. And he beat. And the one thing too is you always hear people say like, well, he never went to the UFC. Well, like, people don't understand. The UFC wasn't the top promotion in the world. From 1997 to 2007, Pride Fighting Championship was the preeminent and premier MMA organization where all the top fighters were, and he was their champion for almost the entirety of the company's existence. In fact, he was the number one world ranked heavyweight from 2003 all the way to 2010. And during that time, he won 3 openweight World Grand Prix tournaments between Pride and Rings. He also won 3 World Heavyweight titles between Rings, WAMA, and Pride. And he successfully defended his number 1 ranking and world title in 6 subsequent defenses. No other fighter in history has defended a world heavyweight title in MMA more than 3 times successfully. Like, no one's even hit a 4th defense. He did it 6 times. And amongst that time, he also was fighting the best fighters in the world in non-title fights as well. He was a wrecking ball. He was a destroyer, and he was one of the most prolific and scariest fighters I've ever seen in my entire life. And then even after 2010, after he ate his first loss and he declined, he still, like, I don't have the exact numbers, but he still was defeating world champions across multiple disciplines across the world, and was only losing to the tip-top competition and other legendary Hall of Famers and top-end world champions. So I am sad to see Fedor retire. It was unfortunate, that fight he had just recently with Ryan Bader. As far as my favorite moment, it might be him sitting in Nogueira's guard in the first fight for the entirety of the fight and just doing what nobody thought was possible and smashing a top-level world champion Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt with his Sambo background and literally avoiding every submission and just dominating the guy. It also might be him getting slammed on his head by Kevin Randleman, a suplex that would have killed most people, and then moments later arm barring him and getting the guy out of there in just moments. The time he fought Kazuyuki Fujita, yes, that Fujita from New Japan and No Acclaim, and getting caught with one of the scariest overhand rights that would have probably knocked out most people, and weathering a crazy storm from Fujita and eventually turning it around and beating him. The fight with Mirko Krokop, the most feared striker in the history of MMA up to that point, and the biggest super fight in MMA history. And going to war with Krokop in one of the most beautiful fights of all time. That fight's up there. Or it might be when he went to America and the UFC talked all that shit and said he wasn't really a great champion, and then he smashed Tim Sylvia, and then he smashed Andrei Arlovsky in subsequent fights and just kind of embarrassed the Fertittas and Dana White. It could be those as well. I don't know. But, congrats to Fedor on his retirement. I'm glad we got to see him fight. And if you guys have never seen Fedor in his prime, you need to go out of your way and check him out. He was the all-time GOAT. So that's going to do it for the show. Let's jump into recommended matches of the week and be out of here. So last week I was given 2 matches. One was the recommended match of the week from Jeremy, Kushida versus Volador Jr., Best of the Super Juniors 24, Night 13. Really loved this match. Kind of interesting because it was the B block final leading into the finals for that year's Super Junior, but I kind of forgot that they didn't always, especially at that point in time, give the same level of production and attention to these tournament nights as they do nowadays. And so the matches, it has multiple camera angles, but it's definitely their lower quality camera, and there's no commentary. And the match is good. It's not great. It was on its way to being great. Kushida is very, very, very good at working that lucha libre style. Him and Volador have actually only had 2 matches ever in history. This is the last one. They had one other match in CMLL, prior to this, I think the year prior. But him and Volador had a great back and forth contest, but it didn't feel, watching it, like this was a highly important match in the tournament, when in fact it was the finals of the B Block finals, and the winner of this match would go on to face Will Ospreay in the tournament final. So it didn't have that same level of urgency that you would expect from a B Block final. It felt more like a really cool kind of indie showcase type match, but nonetheless, it was very good. Down the stretch, though, what I didn't like is Kushida hits his Back to the Future suplex. It's a suplex turned into a small package in the middle of the air, and he liked to pin people with that. And he hits it on Volador, and he gets the one, and then Volador reverses it to where Kushida's shoulders are down, and then they start the count again. They go into the 1-2, and then Kushida reverses it to Volador, and the referee counts 3, and then the match ends. And it's really wonky because it's like, why didn't you restart the count? I don't know. It seemed to be a mishap on the referee's side of things. The crowd was not lively on this evening, and had this been in front of a bigger arena or a better crowd, it would have probably got a lot more praise and recognition. Nonetheless, still a great match. I'm like 3 3/4 on it, and if you haven't seen it, I'd definitely recommend it. As far as the excursion match of the week, we had a question last week from Rocky Romero. He asked us, have we seen his match with Volador Jr. from January 20th, 2023, CMLL Super Viernes, Friday night, Arena Mexico, for the CMLL World Historic Welterweight Championship. And we had not, but I went out of my way to go ahead and check it out. And guys, when I got done watching this, one word came to my mind, and that word is masterpiece. This is undoubtedly a leading frontrunner contender for Excursion Match of the Year already. This was incredible. Rocky Romero has done incredible heel work in this feud with Volador Jr. I kind of got myself caught up just a bit, and him and Volador went out there, and I was a little confused because I was expecting this to be a 2 out of 3 falls match, and I don't watch a lot of Lucha Libre, but when I do, I kind of understand the tropes. I've seen a lot of their bigger 2 out of 3 falls title matches, and so I was sort of expecting the tides to kind of turn and someone to get their quick victory, and then that never came. Then I realized, like, down the stretch, like, oh, this is it. Like, it's a single fall match. I didn't even understand that. But nonetheless, while Rocky was the heel and Volador was clearly the babyface, and Rocky was definitely using heel persona to draw the ire of the crowd, this was a pretty clean match nonetheless. And these guys, not only did they have a lot of great technical and mat wrestling, the big spots and the dives to the outside, this was some of the best stuff I've seen from Rocky in a long time. And Rocky's always fantastic, and we're always singing his praises, but like, he put in the extra effort here in a big stakes main event, and so did Volador Jr., and they just blew me away. And there were so many incredible near falls and times where I thought the match was over and it just wasn't. They just kept kicking out. Remind me a lot of like a Lucha Libre version of like Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels almost. You know, I had that WrestleMania-esque type of feel where they're hitting their biggest offense on one another, and both guys just kept coming for more and just kept kicking out. And down the stretch, the finish was so great. There's a point where Volador is on the top rope, and it looks like he's getting ready to, you know, set Rocky up for a finisher, and Rocky stands up, hits him with a, you know, open hand strike, elbow, I believe, gets on the top rope, and then they do a flying, you know, he basically dives with Volador to where they land in the cross arm breaker spot, and immediately Volador just starts tapping, and the crowd is aghast. They did not in any respect believe that Rocky Romero was going to win. And if you guys are not aware, like, this title belt has been tied to Volador like the greater part of this entire decade. You know, he's had 3 title reigns, and each one has been very, very lengthy with a lot of title defenses. And this is kind of like the Volador Jr. world title, and Rocky Romero has taken it from him And the post match was great. Rocky was, doing a great heel job and telling people to suck it, and it was just so good. I'm not doing it justice giving the full recap. I wish I could give you guys a better recap, but it is free. It's available on YouTube. I reposted it on our Twitter account, and I'm 4 3/4 on this. I'm like just a smidge shy away from a 5-star rating. That's how good this match was. Blew me away. Just blew me away. Kudos to those guys. So we're going to take a break on recommended match of the week since Jeremy's out of town. And we will come back next week with more recommendations. So that is going to do it for this week's show. Next week, we'll be back to review New Beginning in Osaka and preview Best in the Valley on February 18th. If you've enjoyed today's show, please consider making a donation. Visit socialsuplex.com/donate and click on the donate button under the Keepin' It Strong Style logo. Make sure to connect with us on social media on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Reddit. Or you can email Jeremy at socialsuplex.com. On Twitter, we're at KI Strong Style. On Facebook, we run the Wrestling Squared Circle Facebook group. And you can also find Keepin' It Strong Style on Instagram. On Reddit, Jeremy's the Pro Black Guy, and I am Keepin' It Strong Style. Check out all of our other shows on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. One Nation Radio, hosted by Rich Latta and James Boyd. Grave Consequences with Caleb and Maserati. All Things Elite with Floyd and Austin. The AEW Match Guide Podcast, hosted by Sir Sam. And The Great Match Generator, hosted by Danny Kugler. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating and review. And before I give you guys the tagline, if you've enjoyed the show, you probably can hear my voice is pretty hoarse. Give us some follow-up. Let us know what you thought of this week's show. It's my first time ever doing a solo show. Hit us up on Twitter or on Reddit. We greatly appreciate it. We will catch you next week on Keepin' It Strong Style, the ace of podcasts, Ichiban.
Thank you for listening to Keepin' It Strong Style. We'll see you next time.